All right, everyone. The hour having been arrived at, it is Monday, March 9th, 2026. I'm going to call to order the Bridgewater Finance Committee meeting at 7:02. So now that we've done call to order, we will go over item B, approval of meeting minutes. And they are meeting minutes from March 2nd, so that's, I think, last week. If everybody had a chance to read them over, are there any questions, concerns, comments for any changes or grammatical errors that may be there or anything like that? We can talk about them.
Yes, MJ.
Oh, yes, Mr.
Um,
Palmieri, what do you have?
Oh, I
okay.
sorry.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say I did notice when I was setting up the agenda that one of the votes was incorrect.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to let you guys know that I was going to make that edit when I post them. It's for the Parthenon freeze.
That's correct.
I had it as unanimous when it was a
Unanimous.
5-3 vote.
That's right. That's right.
Sorry,
That was
I
one.
didn't mean to interrupt you, Nick. I didn't You didn't
No,
pop up
no,
right away.
no. That's no problem at all. Open discussion. That was one of the items. The other one was the comment from one of the members of the town that was there, the first one, Donna Jewell. It was mentioned that it was about the schools, but I think it's important for our particular purposes for people to know what it was that she asked. And if you recall, looking back and listening to it, she had her issue was she wanted us to know that the school committee was going to be voting on the superintendent's contract, which had been noted that it doesn't expire until June of this year. And she actually specifically requested that the finance committee send a letter to the school committee prior to their meeting asking that the vote on the superintendent's contract be delayed until we and the town council had the opportunity to review the results of the audit. And then we would have a better idea of what the 27 fiscal year budget was going to be. And I think that's an important point, and certainly one that if somebody was looking at these minutes down the road, they might find interesting. So if I have to make that as a motion to have that amended,
I believe that would have to be a motion, correct, Josh?
Yeah, so Nick, what you can do is you can motion to approve the minutes with that amendment, and then
okay.
I can go through and do that.
Okay, so you want me to take a motion to amend and then get you the the verbiage that I had written down? It's up to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, okay. I'll do that and I'll email it to you.
Yep, that works.
Okay, should we delay the vote on this then until that's both of those amendments are made?
You can make the motion to approve with that with those amendments, or if you would like to, you wouldn't have to make a motion to amend at that point if you want to, if you guys want to continue it to the next meeting. I would just make that correction and then we put it on the next agenda, but there would need to be a vote
Okay,
in that case.
that's how I would. It would be better if we approve the exact minutes of the meeting. So okay, then I would. If I
Well,
then
well,
my motion. I'm
there's
sorry.
one other, Nick, there's one other one in there too before you go forward with a motion is I thought the tax issue that we'd sent back was for fiscal year
Oh,
2027, not for
yeah,
2026.
that's
And
right.
that was on the veterans COLA exemption.
The one we moved forward. That's right.
Uh,
So if you want, in this particular instance, let's um let's make it a combined motion then. Mr. Palmieri's item along with Mr. Higgins's item to state the corrections as mentioned by Mr. Palmieri, but also to include the movement of the committee regarding the 22J, I believe, exemption legislation that had been offered. So to make those adjustments, I would just need one singular motion. Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, you could. I'll accept that as the wording for my motion, so that it would be. There's technically three changes: the Donna Jewel comment,
Mhm.
the vote on the freeze, correcting the voting. Number three was John's item relative to the HERO Act item and how that was delayed until we found out relative to the 27 budget.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the minutes for that, and it says that it was recommended to be sent back to town council for corrections. John, what was the amendment that you wanted
Yeah,
to?
Josh, my only issue was it's a fiscal 2027. I think the issue
Yeah, there
was
was
that
some
we were
confusion in
voting
that.
on a COLA increase for a 2027 tax rate that we haven't even passed the 2027 budget for.
Right.
So I
Right.
think that's why it was sent back to committee. It's a because I think all the fiscal tax rates for 2026 have been set already.
That's
So we
correct.
couldn't go change those anyways. That's all. I think it's just the date of it, the fiscal year 2026 should be 2027.
Okay. Okay.
Great. So
Does
with
that
the
make sense, guys? I think that's the way I
Perfectly.
remembered it, and I think we got the motion to send it back, and then we'll deal with it once we see the budget come through.
That's correct. That was the intent, and that was the goal as the committee had put last week. So with that amended motion, do I hear a second to the amended motion submitted by Mr. Palmieri?
I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
Seconded by Mr. Higgins. Josh, can you take the roll call, please?
MJ,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Chris. Chris,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Rig.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will now move on to item C on our agenda, public comment. As always, if there are residents of the town who are in attendance and wish to speak, please state your name and your address for the record so that we may properly record it in the minutes, so that you may also be properly recorded as well in the minutes. Are there any members of the public who would wish to speak this evening before us? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. And we appreciate, in any case, members of the public in attendance this evening. So now we'll move on to item D, old business. We do not have any old business this evening. So we will now move on to item E, new business. And just to give a little bit of background to everyone, there were several items of conversation that the committee wanted to discuss last week and asked that we have added to our agenda. While there is no legislation for action this evening, I am aware that members of the committee did want to have these points be discussed, so we will give proper time to each item on the agenda so that we can have a fulsome conversation and give our committee next steps. So with that, we will start first off with the annual audit results discussion. First and foremost, I know that earlier we did receive materials from the finance department detailing what our annual audit looked like, the independent audit that's done every year. So this would be for the fiscal year 2025 that ended. And I will hand it over to Laurie Greeny and Justin Casanova Davis to give us more details about it so that we can have a discussion about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if Justin wanted to speak first, just to.
No,
You guys-
Lori's got it. I mean, Lori has sent the report to the FinCom. And good evening, everybody. So her team usually does most of the work regarding the audit, so I'll let her speak to it.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, members of the committee, for being here tonight, this evening. So yeah, I'm just gonna I shared with you all the audit report, and I think I sent it along a little earlier to even before it was on your discussion, due to the fact that we were putting it up on the website. So I wanted to make sure it was in everybody's inbox before we went out and publicly put it on the website. So what typically happens is once the auditors complete their report and they send their final report with the findings and the financials, and then we work to schedule what they call an exit interview. It's part of their contract that after they do a review of the books and all, they come in and do a public presentation to the community. So that hasn't been scheduled yet. But my suggestion is when we get that scheduled on the council, with their busy agendas and schedule, your busy agendas and schedule, and then the auditors too, who are busy. So once we get that date set, we will, notify everyone, and hopefully maybe we can see a joint committee meeting with the town council. You and the members can come to the meeting and hear the presentation by the auditing firm. So yeah, that's typically how the process works too, but I'll be happy to just share with you that there was, this audit that was completed with a clean, they call it a clean audit, which is no material findings, which is the highest standard that a community can get. Because when they're checking through not only the financials, putting our financials together, and they're checking through our internal policies, our budgeting processes, our anything that's transparent with the council, and posted to the general ledger. I mean, so they go from soup to nuts through our processes and collectively, report back. So I am happy to report that it was a good audit. So I hope everyone's had a chance to review that. Let me just see here. What else did I want to say real quick? Yeah, so let me see. Yeah, I guess I can just put it out there to the body. I just wanted to let you know that what a clean opinion means is that they don't find any findings, which is good because that shows that the community, from the council votes to the department monitoring to the accounting oversight, the reconciliation processes, and all of our internal controls are right where they should be. So we're pleased with that. And it's clear, transparent, and I'm happy to answer any questions to that point.
Thank you,
So.
Laurie. Having a chance to read it over, knowing and being familiar with what audits usually typically entail, I guess some more of the granular background about what happens when an audit comes into the town. I know we've had Roselli and Clark for many, many years. They are the ones that have done our audits for, I think, time immemorial, jokingly, I'd say. But they're very thorough in what they do. They look at all of our practices, procedures, and rules that we have to run the town. Is that correct, Laurie?
That's correct.
As it relates to municipal finance.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been your experience with Roselli and Clark that the level of thoroughness is, I guess what I want to ask is that looking at all of our financial figures, how long does it usually take them to do the audit? And what specifically are they looking for outside of any major deficiencies? And what would be defined as a major deficiency for those who are probably, just learning, trying to get a better understanding of what municipal finance entails when it relates to an audit? Because when people hear the term audit in the private sector, it means one thing. When they hear it at the federal level, it means another. But at the local level, what does it typically mean when an auditor comes in and starts to review, aside from practices and procedures, what particularly are they generally looking for? Are they looking for fraud, waste, and abuse? Are they looking for failures of policy? Are they looking for where a department may not be conducting some sort of practice properly? I guess that would probably be the big question that I know that folks in the public might have, and I want to be able to try to see if we can get a little bit of a better feel for that for those that might not be initiated into this.
Okay. Yeah, no, those are all great points, and certainly understanding, some people aren't familiar with our processes, but when the auditors come in and they go into any community, not only are they reviewing, the ledgers and and the accounting and all the numbers. But they also review our internal controls. They verify compliance with accounting standards and regulations. They confirm that the reporting has accuracy. They're checking our reporting to the state, the Division of Local Services. We have to report all of our finance data that gets uploaded and is shared with the state on their DLS website. It's all certified and tested and everything is reported, to the law. So they do. I don't know how to explain like the municipal side of things, but they're looking at everything. They're looking at if the departments are monitoring and staying within their budgeted appropriations, if anything's overrun or when the council goes out and makes orders, why are they, what is that for? And are we spending it properly to what the intentions of any kind of order is? So, I mean, they go through the process of testing. They're making sure our cash reconciles every month. What are the, discrepancies monthly? Are they things that happen every month, or are they things of just once in a while? Or so they're looking at everything, including how we manage, the town's finances, and their job is to make sure that transparency and accountability to the community and to the stakeholders is you know what's there. So they're just confirming that. They're confirming that public funds are managed properly and we're in compliance with all the state's laws and any kind of federal laws, so we have to be in compliance from when things are appropriated, when things are spent, and then when things are closed out. So, they go through a process of they're here maybe 5 days a week, but there's a team of maybe, I don't know, sometimes there's 5 to 6 people, they're all in the conference room and they all have a specific area that they're looking at. And, they collect all of our assets, meaning how do they know that there's a new asset? Well, they look through all of our capital projects and things going on. And so they go through each account. We have, a lot of different funds and accounts and they go through everything. So the things that you might have said that what are things that they could find? In the past, we've had tailings that stayed on the books, meaning we've had uncashed checks that, 10 years ago stayed on the books for 20 years or so. So they would put that as a finding and say the town's not, going out to and taking care of the tailings. Or if there's, they see that cash isn't reconciled every month, or they see a certain thing happening in one of the monthly I don't know, one of the monthly banks or something, that every month that there's a reconciling item or things like that. So we've put in so many controls and internal policies, and we reconcile almost as soon as we get the bank statements. Our collection and treasurer reconcile with the bank, and then we reconcile with the treasurer to make sure that, we also look at the bank statements. But the auditors too, they pull all the things and they double, triple look at things that we're doing, and we're happy to report that in the last since I've been here, we've got some great internal controls in place to make sure that we're, counting accounting for the town and the taxpayers' money, because that's our job, right? So
And there's a couple of follow-up questions, Laurie. Thank you for all of that. Typically, when do the audits usually occur? I know I'm familiar with it, having been on the collection side of it for several years. when do the auditors usually typically come in, and when the audit is conducted, does any of the data that we give to the auditors affect our ability to have our free cash certified during the late summer, early fall? I know that good standard practices allow us to get our figures and data over to DOR, but I know that some folks might be curious as to if an audit affects our abilities to obtain our free cash figures or to have our revenues certified by DOR.
Oh, that's another great question. So we actually they usually come when we after our free cash is certified. Oh, there goes my light. So yeah, so we're pretty good about closing our books pretty timely, and then in the summer we close the books usually, sometime August. We aim for August so that September we give a month to get our reporting to the DLS and our free cash certified. So we've been fairly consistent with having our free cash certified on or before Labor Day. And then once we have that done, the auditors sometimes will be reaching out because their schedule is pretty busy in the fall, but they like to come in the fall. And as soon as we do close the books, sometimes they'll ask if, we want to just send all of our final reports electronically. We upload to their secure website, and so they get started on it, but they typically will schedule in the fall after our free cash is done. So October, November, they're here by. This year they were a little late in November only because they're super busy. So, but it's
And then,
usually in the fall.
thank you, Lori. And then one last question.
Mhm.
Knowing that one of the keys to a good financial picture to be able to get borrowing and good interest rates, how important is an annual audit of this nature to maintaining or improving our bond rating?
Another great question. So yeah, it's vital. I mean, we always want to have, especially, a clean finding, but yeah, most communities have them done every year, no matter what, and we're one of them. There was a time 20 years ago when there was talk of not funding audits because we couldn't afford them, but that's that was put to bed early, and we close the books and get the audit done every year because we don't want to be surprised with anything, and quite frankly, you know it just doesn't make any sense not to. The taxpayers want to be reassured that everything is transparent and on the up and up, and so do we. I want anything that if there was something to know, I'd want to know immediately. So it's every year we do it.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Laurie. I've asked my questions. I will open it up to members of the committee to ask questions if they have any additional ones that I might not have been able to think of. But because this is a learning experience right now this evening, I'm looking for members to step up and ask additional questions. I think I saw Mr. Palmieri looks like he wants to ask a question, so I'm gonna guess
I
that pretty
do.
correctly.
I do. I do. Thank you, MJ. Um, uh, I have not had the opportunity personally to pour through the entire audit report, but I did go through some of the management sections, and one of them that's in there is relative to the scope limitation. And the line from the auditors is that there were no limitations, which would mean to me that they could ask questions about a variety of things, not just what's in front of them that's been provided. So, um, and having been through audits before, it's not uncommon for the auditors to ask, by the way, is anything going on in the community that could potentially affect the budget? So were they given any information with respect to what's happening, which and has been happening actually for some time relative to the water situation in the town?
Well, I don't really know if that I don't know how they would audit the water. I don't know what you're
That's not what I
saying.
said. That's not what I said, Larry. I didn't say
Okay.
they would audit the water. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is that this situation that we're currently in the middle of could be a rather expensive situation, and that is the money part of it. How that will potentially impact our budget relative to increased debt. Um, we have the potential, looking at what has been happening, especially now with DEP getting involved, possibly with lawsuits. So there's a lot going on, and these are things that could impact our budget. Is that not true?
Sure, that could be true, but I don't know what it relates to the audit, what you're trying to say. If that,
Well, because everything is all rosy, but it's really not.
So I think the question you're trying to ask, Nick, is based upon the potential for upcoming financial costs related to water infrastructure or potential legal liabilities for the
Mhm.
town, what kind of financial impact would that have on our likely probably our bond rating if we have to do additional borrowings? How would that affect our audit going forward? Would that be a limitation to us actually being able to conduct an audit and then also be able to maintain our bond rating? Is that what I think that's what I'm trying, I think that's
Well,
what I'm hearing.
there's a look, anything that happens has a financial impact, no matter
Right.
how
Mhm.
it is. And this is one thing that is very, very glaring, and in the news currently. A lot of people are concerned about it, as they should be. This has been a problem that's been going on in the town for we're looking at years, and this is now just basically come to the surface. So now we have to address it. And we are in the middle of trying to figure out how that's going to be done. We have a water deficit, let alone a water quality problem. So all of this is money. The town of Hanover just recently um, voted to. They're looking at the purchase of water filtering for PFAS. They had an upfront cost of approximately between 27 and $30 million, with a maintenance annually of $500,000 just for
Mhm.
PFAS. And
Mhm.
that's been thrown out there. Think about these things. And I certainly do when I'm looking at these other towns, because some of them are in very similar straits. Um, these are things I think that need to be planned. I mean, we just went through a winter where we budgeted a certain amount of money, and because Mother Nature decided it wasn't going to comply with us, that it cost us a heck of a lot more than that. So we have to take and come up with money for that. And it was a substantial amount of money. Same thing is happening here with the water. That's my concern. Um, and I know what you're saying, Laurie, that yes, we do. We want to be fair and transparent to the people of the town.
Mhm.
There are a lot of other things. Wait, we haven't even started on the schools yet. That really are we are coming to a crucial point in the history of this town relative to finance.
Mhm.
And there I have so many questions, even relative to the water. Um, it's I don't know. Where this is going, but do you understand my question now? Do you get that? And I'm just
I
asking.
do. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. I totally understand where your concern is. My concern is too. I'm a parent. I want clean water for myself but what my job here is, you wanted to talk about the audit. I don't think the audit or the auditors can come in and predict, what kind of financial condition you're going to be in. So believe me, I feel all of the things that you feel. I feel all of um the worry and I feel it in my heart and my gut too. So I know there's a ton of things to do. All I can do tonight for you is tell you about the audit of our books from 2025. And I wish I could, like, wave a magic wand and tell everybody everything they need to know.
Laurie,
But
my question was very simple. I just
Mhm.
asked if they had been given any of that information. I'm sure when they were here for the 3 to 5 days, when the auditors were here, they may have picked up the local newspaper, turned on cable. They might have done any of that and
Right.
seen exactly what we're dealing with. This thing called Facebook and social media. And you know what? They can see that. I know the Department of Environmental Protection is very deeply involved in this and very surprised at what they've been looking at.
Mhm.
So you can tell this is not something that is hidden. I
No.
just asked if they asked any questions about that or if they were given any information on that.
Well, the questions to ask on that are the
Lori,
there's
let
no
me chime in
answer.
real quick.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think Nick,
thanks.
I think that would be a good question to ask the audit group when they come in, because in the
Okay.
scope of what their work that they're doing, that wouldn't
Yep.
be an avenue that they would be exploring. For example, if you're looking at, authorized, issued or unissued debt, there's a section in the audit report, and I don't know where it is off the top of my head, but it talks about some of the debt that's been authorized, et cetera. Obviously, there had been some debt for water wells previously, so I know they're in the audit report. Off the top of my head, I can't say exactly where, but I would frame that question for the auditors so you can
Okay.
understand what their scope of what they're looking at when they come into a community. That would be my
Yep.
recommendation.
Okay. But once again, I think we're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. It was a
Yeah.
very simple question, and that was, do you recall that either being discussed or presented to them? That's all. Yes, no, or maybe.
Well,
I think I
yes.
know the answer, but go
Yes,
ahead.
they ask everything. I mean, they can see what the town has for debt service and everything, so they want to know what's going on. So if they want to look on Facebook, I don't think
Okay.
they're
Yeah, we're
gonna
not
do
going to speak to
that.
whether they're
But
looking at Facebook. I
yeah,
would,
And I know
yeah.
you're not going to want to give them that kind of information either, willingly, but
no, they have to know
no
everything
problem.
about the town. We don't hide anything from them.
Yeah,
Whatever
No,
they
so there
ask.
you go. There's
Yeah,
the answer to my
yeah, of
question. I just asked if
course.
that was out there. By the way, there's a possibility down the road that could affect some of this because that's part of their report. They do give
Absolutely. Yeah,
that
sure.
information. I didn't see. I only read that the verbiage for their exit interview, if you will, as opposed to I haven't gone through the budget itself. I just got it today. So yes, and Justin, you're right. There are some good questions for them. The other question is, who signed off on the water issues is a question I'd like to ask. And then, um, um, Laurie, do we have a list? And Justin, you're on here. Do we have a list of who the town has that are authorized um, to create debt like this? Can anybody do that? Can somebody in the water department just
Create debt service?
buy
No,
something?
the council will vote on debt service.
So who's
Nick,
authorized? Are there people authorized?
am,
Mm.
am I hearing your question correctly? You're looking to ask what the mechanism is for creating borrowing for specific infrastructure, and who would be the
Right,
person to sign off on that?
purchasing.
Okay. Um, I can at least give a little bit of it just from my experience being in a treasurer collector's office.
Mhm.
When the projects are, and Justin, you can help me out with this too. When borrowing is done, the treasurer collector is the one that's responsible for doing all the paperwork to get it all together to be able to authorize the borrowing. The council will eventually vote on that borrowing. But the treasurer collector's office is responsible for getting every bit of information together because they have to fill out documentations as to form, amount. There has to be um, a bond counsel involved to develop the proposal to put bond out to the general market because bonding is just like borrowing out in the private sector. You're basically investing in the municipality to be able to one do the project, but also to be able to pay back that loan, and it's at a rate of interest for a long period of time. So what happens is if you have a project that needs to be done, the treasurer collector is going to be the one tasked with developing how much is going to be borrowed, when it's going to be borrowed for, and they're the ones that are going to work with the town to get that information out there to the general market, to get it invested, and to get the borrowing conducted. The council would be obviously taking the ultimate vote on that, but the overall figures, getting it all together, that package to create that borrowing, say, let's just say, case in point, something for, say, $5 million. There's also going to be an evaluation of our bond rating to see what the rating is, because that's going to involve, basically, it's like a credit rating. It's going to tell the bond council how much we're going to be able to borrow for. And it's going to tell the banks how much they are going to be able to be willing to lend to us for a percentage for how long. It's a bond rating is just like a credit rating in the private sector for folks like you and me when we want to go and borrow stuff for homes or cars. There is a little bit more complexity to it. It does take a little bit of time, but ultimately the party that has to sign the documentation, the town manager will be involved in doing the final sign-offs. Treasurer collector would be the ones signing off on it because they're the ones actually authorized to do the borrowing. And then the town would be the recipient of the benefit of the borrowing to conduct their project. Justin, I'm not sure. Did I miss anything in that?
No, I think you got the gist of it. I would just make one little amendment. I think the key part in that is that it's the council ultimately, and obviously the FinCom. If you guys remember, I don't know, several months ago, there was a loan authorization for water system improvements, for example. It doesn't come from town staff first, or we go out for initially, and MJ didn't say that. I just want to emphasize it's authorized, approved by the town council ultimately.
Mhm.
But it's also in collaboration with the FinCom, for example. You guys had that loan authorization that was presented to you.
Okay, there was another question I had too, and it's under it was in that same part of the report. It's under other audit findings relative to management. They're talking about, it says here, with respect to OPEB, the town has been contributing $110,000 annually to its OPEB trust and has currently accumulated approximately 1.6 million, which represents 4.3% of the gross liability. That's relatively small. The state average funding ratio of those reporting data to the state was 6.4% in 2022. Are we kicking the can down the road dramatically in this? We don't have the money. If we don't have the money to fund this, because that's a pretty good sized liability. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a date floating around of, what is it, 2031? Is that right? That they wanted to have
No,
that
that's
money?
not right. I think you're conflating the pension obligation. It's a loaded question, Nick, because what I would say is what most, and I say a majority of communities, so every community addresses this issue individually. But in terms of pension, long-term obligations, so we're talking about pension and LPEP, for example.
Mhm.
The pension liability is the one that's probably the closest to getting resolved sooner than later. And depending on if it's a part of an independent community, so Cambridge, for example, has its own pension obligations, not part of a county system. We're part of a county system. The county may set up a goal of 2031. That's probably what you're referencing. There was data about having, reaching fully funding our pension obligation in the county system in 2031 for pension liability. So that's the one that's under sort of law that we have to resolve pension liability sooner than later. What communities have planned, some communities, not all, but what some communities have planned is once they resolve the pension liability, then to shift those resources that were funding the pension liability to the OPEB, and that'll be the next liability they address. So when you get fully funded the pension obligation, there will be some funds that open up in terms of the general fund budget. And then what you could do, you could make a determination then whether you want to invest that money into the OPEB liability or you want to invest it somewhere else. But that's what most communities are doing. So when you say, are we kicking the can down the road? Look, if you're not fully funding an obligation, you are naturally going to the future. I won't say kicking the can, but if you have a plan in place to say, all right, once you fully fund the pension obligation, my recommendation might be to shift that funding to the OPEB so we can navigate that as well quickly. But that's dependent on every community. That would be obviously a community discussion, and that would be a discussion with obviously the finance staff having a recommendation, the town manager having a recommendation, and ultimately what the town council wants to do as part of the budget. And the FinCom as well, right? It'll be a community decision.
That would be us,
Yeah.
indeed. Well, and that's these are all things, that's been so lacking. Justin, you weren't attending the last meeting that we had, but that's one of the issues that we highlighted, and it brought a lot of this stuff forward, was the fact that uh, I think there was kind of a little bit of a confusion in the past as to how the real finance committee in the town of Bridgewater or anywhere else should work. And according to the charter, it kind of should be here, then brought back. We're the ones who are supposed to be making recommendations to you and to the town council. So we can't do that if we don't have any of that information. And
Well, Nick, what I would say regarding that, I wasn't here for the consistency of the finance committee before. We've got new membership here. We've got a new manager here. We've got a new town council. There's a lot of different new players here. Is what I would say is that we've got to work collaboratively. That's something that I've said the minute that I met with the FinCom. But I would know that, I think there was difficulties with quorums and different things before with getting an active finance committee. I think we have a very active finance committee. I think MJ has represented to the town council that you guys want to be more involved. And, I've talked about with MJ about how we can be more collaborative. So I think all parties understand that we just got to work, especially in a difficult budget climate and with a lot of difficult issues on the horizon for the town.
okay, so how do you address the the charter? The charter basically says that how it's supposed to work is that we are supposed to be making our recommendations to the town manager and to the town council. We're
We do
supposed
give
to
a
be,
recommendation to the town council. They don't take a final action until the FinCom sends a recommendation, Nick. For
do they,
example, for
do they-
example, you had for example, I'll give you the capital discussion, right? The committee wanted a little bit more time to review the capital. So
Mhm.
while the budget and finance subcommittee of the council took action, it did go to the town council from that recommendation part, but they could not take any action until the FinCom weighed in. So they do wait for your recommendation as well.
okay, that's one instance.
But that's all instances. If something's forwarded to the finance committee, generally there's a recommendation that gets associated and gets reported to the town council. I know MJ can probably speak to it. They've wanted, maybe there's more memos or different things along with it, just not just a vote. But I think those are opportunities that you guys are exploring with the town council. I'll let MJ speak to that because, that's obviously the finance committee.
Thank you, Justin. And I can definitely tell you that, from time to time, the town council has actually asked if we can give summaries of some of the more contentious votes or more numerically different votes when we've had, say, like in the case when we have a full meeting quorum, if we have a 5-4 decision or an 8-3 decision or anything like that, they typically ask us, what was the reason behind it. I think one particular measure, and I think it was the capital plan. The reason why the vote came down on the capital planning was because there were concerns raised about the IT department's funding in the capital plan for the long term. And I made sure that the town council was aware of that. And if I recall correctly, when they did finally meet, it was brought up in their meeting, and that was something that they did take as a point of consideration. So when we do make a decision or we make a vote, they do value it when we send them a memo about it. It is something that I've tried to keep up with the town council itself, and also I've gone to the town council meetings to also be present as best as possible when I'm able to do so, to be able to present to them if they have any questions while in person, because as chair of the finance committee, I feel it important to be the representative of our membership, and members are always welcome to go along to the council meetings as well. But to present and give that data to them, that is something that we, based upon our conversations, based upon our votes, we send that information to them. That is something that I have tried to do over the last couple of years. It's something that I'm very proud to have been able to get started and get going, because it hasn't really necessarily happened in the past. So it is something that we have started to get going. I did want to try to bring the conversation back to the annual audit itself, the results, to try to see if there were any other members that did have additional questions about the audit itself and the report that we did receive. I do see Mr. Higgins had his hand raised. So, Nick, I want to thank you for asking your questions and, giving us some additional items to ponder. We might even talk about that further when we get to the later part on our agenda about water legislation discussion. So that being said,
Absolutely.
yep. So that being said, I will hand it over to Mr. Higgins for his questions. Mr. Higgins, what were your questions?
Yeah, so I have three of them. Thank you, MJ. And first off, Josh, thank you for all the information. I mean, it was a lot given to us, and I mean, I did have a little bit of time today to review it, but specifically to the audit. So the ambulance receivables and bad debt. So what is, there's 2.5 million in uncollectibles on the ambulance stuff. There's 3.7 in receivables. How does that relate to the amount of revenue that we charge in a year? Is that all in 1 year, Lori? And do we have a collection issue? Because it wasn't mentioned in the audit other than 80% of it, or I don't know the exact number, 75% of it's uncollectible.
Oh, that's a great question. So we have a billing company that does do our collections, and we also 2 years ago we met with the billing company because there's some long-term bad debt, and typically this is another process that the ambulance companies haven't done over the years, but we hired a collection company to go for the bad debt. Now, a lot of it is, some of it is just uncollectible, but it's been on the books for so long now that we haven't wanted to take it off without, getting our arms around the whole thing because the ambulance company has been doing it. So we are working on that with them to try to figure that all out.
So how much is the 2025 revenue, and how much of that is uncollectible?
Of the 2025 revenue?
Yeah, so what do we collect for ambulance fees in 2025, and how much of it, or what did we bill for 2025 ambulance fees, and how much of it has not been collected?
Well, I have a breakout per year, and I can get that to you, what the bad debt were per year. But I don't have that data tonight for you. Sorry.
So I guess my final question on just the ambulance part, I do have two other questions, but on the ambulance part is, did the auditors find anything that was unusual about that amount of activity? And I mean, have we looked at it as a town? Is it a business we want to be in if we can't collect for the services that are rented?
Yeah, so we constantly, ask their advice on that too, and we're like most communities in the Commonwealth, and yeah, we're in the same boat as a lot of other people, like dealing with those questions as well. So,
But John, just to add to that part there, though, I would say for Lori, if your question is the town an outlier on that? No, there was no indication of that. But there was another component of your question that you asked, that whether the town wants to be in the business of offering those services. Now that's a larger question, because I don't want you to think we're just glossing over that. That's an overall community service question too, right? Because there's obviously communities have decided not to continue offering those EMS services, because there is naturally some component of bad debt where you cannot collect. That's a community decision, not just a management decision, and the audit firm would weigh in on that. But that's an important question, obviously, that towns are grappling with.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation, but I would disagree with that, because I think it came up in the discussions with the fire department that we're having to man ambulances and things like this, and if we're not collecting but we're paying out for all this stuff, then I think that we might have to go look at that as a standalone operation. And we've had to park an ambulance, we have to buy ambulances. I mean, if we looked at it as its own standalone deal and say maybe it would be better to send it out. 2.7 seems like, or 2.5 million seems like a lot of debt to be writing off.
John, I don't know how we disagree with it, because that is an issue that we bring up, and that, once again, I say it's a community decision. That's something that a town council and that community has to ultimately decide, because that's a big decision to determine if you're going to privatize ambulance service or not privatize those ambulance services. And one of the things that I would say is, one of the things that I said that I wanted to do as I came into town is I wanted to collaborate, obviously, with the approval of, allocation of funds, which I'm glad that, we did get support on for the Collins review. That Collins review, I anticipate, is going to make recommendations or thoughts regarding things like that as well. So I don't think we're disagreeing. I'm just saying that's a larger question that requires a larger discussion. But that is absolutely something that we have to look at, right?
Okay, well, I would definitely be interested to see what's current in that, to see if, how much of 2025's revenues we can't collect on it. and why
Lori will
can't
have that
we do it.
information. She can get that for you. Yeah.
Okay, on the debt, the schedules in there, I mean, it seems we barely started in, so I do know that there's a town side and then you've got the business type debt, but the town side has gone from 87 million to about 101 million last year, and that was mainly the fire station coming on at 21.3 million. The enterprise or the business services, it's doubled from 25 million to 57 million, and I do know there's still numbers being thrown out there about 200 million. Can anybody, do the auditors get worried about the amount of debt we're taking on?
Well,
And-
we have it depends on our levy, right? So we're restricted by, there's a formula inside that tells us how much we can borrow based on our future levy too. So
I understand that, but
Mhm.
even like on the enterprise side, so we've got 21 million that's been authorized but just unissued at this point. So after that, what's the amount that we're going to be doing over the next 3 years? And have they looked at that? Because we've headed down a path of starting water and sewer upgrades. It's going to get us somewhere into, I don't know, you guys know better than me, somewhere near 240 million. Is that correct? 200 million. How much is going to be done on the business activities for debt by the time
Well,
we're done?
that's part of in regards to the water master plan is part of the capital plans that have been indicated. I think that's a moving number, John. But in terms of your question in saying, does the audit group take a look at that finding? I would say the bond rating agencies take more of a look in terms of your debt and your long-term obligation. For example, they give direct reports about your liabilities, what your debt per capita is, and take a look at that. That's more of where that look is at. It's not necessarily the auditors doing it. They have two separate functions. I would probably, once again, I would ask that of the audit group so you can understand how they look at it differently. But in terms of, I think, Lori, we probably have a recent bond review for the fire station. I might recommend we send that over to the FinCom so
Yeah,
they can see.
it's called a continuing disclosure. So
Yeah.
it updates, the current financials, the last current, few years of what's been authorized, unissued. So I can send it's called a continuing disclosure.
But
Yeah.
what so we've started down on the business type activities. We've already started issuing debt to clean up to begin to improve the infrastructure there. They don't look at the full picture of what we're going to do. I mean, so why would we even start the process? We've gone 22 million or 32 million this year of authorized debt. I assume it's for water and sewer. It looks like it's mainly for the sewer part of it. I don't think I know it doesn't include, what's already gone on in 2026, but they wouldn't look at the project in total and say, why would you even start to spend at this rate if you can't complete the project?
Well, they give recommendations too. So, it's not we don't start the process, we're just updating it. So I can just send you what the very latest continuing disclosure looks like.
Okay, I understand that, but
That's from Moody's. Yeah.
yeah, can the town afford to take on, can the taxpayers of the town afford this project? And why would we even start down there if we haven't looked at it from a whole? And that's the water and sewer side. So that also includes some of the Nick had brought up. My third question is on the benefit side of this thing. I understand what you're saying, Justin, that in the audit, they've talked about, the pension and the OPEB or the health insurance, but it's also part of the operating problems because you see it in every part of the school, you see it in the town. The benefits are taking up a bigger and bigger portion of the salary and benefit expense. You only show us the salary side of it, and then the benefits sit down from that. But to me, it looks like it's running about 30% of every dollar of payroll. So when we go out and give a dollar pay raise, we're also upping the benefit side of it by another, they're getting another 30 cents on that. And all of these unfunded liabilities are now flowing through the current year P&L. And I do read their notes in there, and they don't tell us if we can afford, I understand what you say, Justin, we're going to go deal with that when we deal with it. But for example, there's a reversal entry of $18 million to the pension liability. Lori, our payment for the year was 5.7. How did
In the general fund, yeah.
Right, from the general fund into the pension. How did the liability for the pensions drop by 18 million if we only made a $5 million payment? So I guess, and that's all part of the debt obligation as well. I would love for the auditors to come back and explain how the town's going to afford all this, or can it afford this? How can a liability drop with a $18 million with a $5 million payment?
Well,
I don't understand.
so John, I think there's a lot of different things in there, and it actually requires a lot of different sources to get that information. Like the auditors aren't going to give that information. We're part of a county retirement system, and they actually go through their own independent audit as well that gives information as well. And that pension liability can either increase or decrease on an annual basis based on investments and returns. There's expected returns. There's a lot of stuff that goes. We probably need MJ have another meeting set up for that part, because that's going to be a separate discussion. That's a separate source you're going to get that information from. The county retirement system provides its own independent auditors regarding that, and there's a report directly that addresses that one too.
Okay, well, and again, Justin, that's why I bring this up, and that's why I push to have separate subcommittees on this. Because if they're going to issue an audit opinion that tells me that we have $100 million in long-term debt, and then we've got, I don't know what the short-term debt is, but we have a lot of debt. Is it a good number or is it a bad number? And we've only got $70 million or $100 million in revenue, and we've got $100 million in long-term debt. I mean, the ratios here are getting way out of whack on that. So as a finance committee, we should understand how we're going to go deal with this. And you can see it, the school committee, they just said, you guys have to pay. But if you go, I got their actual numbers, their benefits are 31% of their payroll. I mean, you can't just look at salary and the benefits and just keep pushing the benefit thing down the line, because sooner or later, we're going to just be doing overrides just to fund the benefits. You might not agree with the math, Justin, but that's exactly where this thing is headed. It's gonna just overtake every bit of revenue we have here.
John, I don't want people to represent what my position. If you haven't heard me say I agree with it or disagree with it, as part of our budget sessions, we talk about the increase to benefits. For example, in the community budget session that we had, we directly talked about that and how that needs to be a priority and that we look at. Yep. And so I think when we get these further discussions about collaboration and so forth, and provide more information, and also the finance committee reviews that information, we can have more in-depth conversations, because I haven't disagreed with you. So I don't know how you said that. Okay, I didn't say I may disagree with you. I've never said I disagree with you.
My bad. I shouldn't have pointed it just at you. I'm just making the figure, or putting the figures out there so that we as a finance committee, as a complicated issue. And the other thing that they point out in the audit, and I would love to know what the plan design for the benefits. What was it designed for? How many active versus inactive employees? And that's something the auditor should know, because I've been involved in these kinds of audits before. I do know that ours right now, they've got to be out of whack. We've got 407 people that are on the benefit programs. Only 176 are active, 231 are inactive. Was the benefit ever designed to support that many inactive people? So I would love for the auditors to give us some reasoning behind some of this debt. The debt is easy. I mean, when we go out and issue a bond, absolutely everybody signs off on it. We go through a process, but it's this unemployment or the employment debt and the other debt that is worrisome to me because it's now affecting the day-to-day operations here. So I would love to have a follow-up on that to understand, to make sure that these audit numbers are correct, and that they have gone back to the agencies. I do know they only audit these programs once every 3 years, but how do they come up with their figures? Especially the $18 million reduction in the pension. I don't understand that. And then my final question is, a follow-up on Nick's thing is, they've gone and they've tested our processes and everything else. So today we have a problem where people have gone out and said we have water that we don't have to deliver. And we're issuing permits down on Broad Street, we're issuing them to houses and everything else. In the 2025 audit, it said they've tested all of these things, they've tested the procedures. Who can bind the company or bind the town like that if they've tested these procedures? If we don't have water to offer, how can we be telling people it's okay, we're going to give you a permit? So somebody either in the water department or somebody in, I don't know what department, but if this has been tested, are we following the procedures that are in place, or have the procedures changed? I know we're dealing with the 2025 audit, and I brought up 2026 issues, but they said that there was no scope, no restrictions to the audit. So that means they've gone in and tested these procedures. You guys must have procedures in place as to who can bind the town and up to what amount. Water is a resource of the town, so who can go do that? And did they test that, and did they find anything wrong?
I think, John, when you hopefully have a joint meeting with the council, you should ask them directly that question, so you can hear directly from them. I think I have no problem when we get to the water related agenda item that's on here. I think it's water legislation discussion. I don't mind talking a little bit further regarding that. But in terms of their finding of water, I would ask the audit firm exactly that question.
Well, did they test your processes and procedures? And is there a procedure in place that says before we can go promise somebody water, who signs off on that in the town, Justin? I guess is what I'm asking. And was that followed in 2025? Because it said there were no findings. So that means it must have been followed. And then that means it's going to be followed in 2026 as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. You're much more eloquent than I am in asking a question. Laurie, and Justin, that is pretty much what I was trying to ask. He's much better at this than I am. But we shouldn't have that water thing if we can possibly take it out of order after this, go right to that. But my point, Laurie, once again, and John brought it out as well, our role, according to what we were quote unquote signed on to, is to make recommendations to the town council, the town manager, the school department, and we are unfortunately aren't always given all the information. Sometimes we have to ask for it. It would be easier if we had it ahead of time. But the bottom line is, when it comes to issues like this, there's a thing called impact. And that impact is probably 90% of the time financial. So we want to see if we can figure out what that is. And that's what the auditors usually do. I mean, I have been, I've participated in several audits before, one a forensic, and a lot of questions were asked that I never expected. And that's why I asked, did they ask any of these things? Do they have any of that information? Because that could color their thinking as to, well, things look good, but the management should be aware of. I didn't see any of that on there. That just looked like something that was done by people, like you said, that have been there for 30 years, and they feel very comfortable doing what they're doing. But you know what? Business as usual has to stop. Whether it's in Bridgewater or any other community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The governor's budget, she just come out with a budget and was it $10 billion more than the last one? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And we're part of that. So, and they're not funding Chapter 70 monies. There's a lot of things that aren't funded as they had been before. And we just took it. I had a question from, a resident today saying, hey, you have a meeting tonight. How are they paying the $900,000 plus that we just spent, and understanding where it went on the snow removal? Is it coming out of free cash? We don't know. And we're talking about it, and we're not getting any answers, guys.
Oh, Nick, I disagree with that. You're talking about, you put it on the agenda, we provided that information, and we're going to actually talk about it today.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I mean, so
But we're not. But we're
let me
talking
finish
about
my
it,
train of
Justin.
thought there, Nick. Let me finish because I think this is becoming very adversarial. It doesn't need to be. Snow and ice, there is a process that is done with snow and ice deficits. And that process has happened every year with every community through the Commonwealth. Not unique to Bridgewater, not unique to anywhere. This is in Massachusetts. So that's what we have on the agenda. That's what Lori is going to be able to tell you what the process is,
Right.
and is going to be able to tell you how we raise and appropriate the funds for that, Nick. That's the process. You asked for it. We're giving that information. We're going to talk about that tonight. So to say that you're asking for, you're not getting information, you are getting the information tonight, Nick.
Not specific to this. What I'm saying, Justin. Okay, so what I just asked the question, and so
It's an
does it
agenda
matter?
item on there. So when you get to the agenda item, we're going to discuss it.
Yeah, can I chime in real quick, guys?
Yes, but first I saw that Mr. Raymond has his hand up and Mr. Knoll has his hand up. Mark,
Okay.
would you be okay with Chris?
Yeah,
I,
no,
going
I will
That's
yield.
fine. I just haven't figured out how to raise my hand yet, but go ahead.
No worries. Mr. Raymond, you have a question?
Yes, I have a couple. I was just curious to know if it'd be possible to get other communication letters or other management comments from the audit. I know there's sub-comments noted on one of these communication letters that were provided, saying that there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, but there's oftentimes separate letters that discuss control issues or process issues or management recommendations.
Yeah, so that,
Um,
yeah, that letter, I sent it to you. It's called a governance letter. So they sent it separately. So that was sent along with the packet. Is that what you're asking for? Because that's where anything would be in that letter.
So I guess I'm asking if there was other communications outside of these. It looks like there's only 4 observations highlighted for management. Were there any other ones?
Chris, to regards to your question, no, we didn't get any supplementary documentation. If we were, we would be included as part of that.
Right.
But you can obviously, once again, if there's a joint meeting with everyone, you could ask them to verify what we're seeing there, but no.
Okay. And then would it also be possible to get a copy of the adjustments that they might have proposed or noted from the audit?
What are you looking for? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
I'm curious to know if they proposed any audit adjustments.
Oh, no, there weren't any. So we didn't have any.
Were those all the questions you had, Mr. Raymond?
I just have one other one in regard to, so I think I'm looking at the right letter, page 3 of 4. It talks about fraud risk and security, network security. I'm just curious to know if there was any specific processes that they noted that had issues with, the cash handling area or purchasing or payroll.
No, so these are just general statements. They're not anything that they found wrong with the community. So they just make sure that we're following our current processes. They're just reminding us to cybersecurity is a very very relevant to a lot of communities right now. And so they just want to make sure that they just remind us again of it. But we've got a pretty stringent cybersecurity on our network. So yeah, I don't know. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I can ask some other questions when we have that meeting with them as well.
Okay.
But thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Raymond. I did see Mr. Knoll has his hands up. Rig, you have a couple questions?
I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just have I have a couple questions, but some thoughts before my questions. I do appreciate, this conversation and our ability to dive deeper into it. I think from my position as a member of this committee and also a resident of the town, um, you know, I have to remind myself that, that there are a number of you know, challenges that we're dealing with. So it's not just a spending challenge, but it's also a revenue challenge, right? I think that, as I hear these ongoing conversations, I think that, the community at some point will need to make some decisions with respect to what we spend money on. Perhaps there might need to be legislations that need to be written up and put before the community to vote on. Um, and these are, when we get to that place, right, these are going to be some, we're going to have to make some hard choices as a community to see if we can slow down, um, the spending until we can figure out the revenue side of things. That's just, for me, I'm simplifying it that way because it's not complicated math, though there's a lot of math involved in it, lack of revenue, the expenditures that we have, comes down, equals debt, large debt. So that's what it comes down to. So I just want to remind, this committee, while we are certainly want answers, um, I don't think this committee itself can come up with answers. I think it needs to be a collective sort of perspective. The committee, town council, town manager, and then the community as well, for us to get out of this hole. So my questions are, Lori, I think you had mentioned, and please correct me if I'm speaking out of context. We've been using this firm for the past 3 or so years. And if so, um, you know, has this always been the firm that we've used? I guess I'm asking the question because, sort of best practices, as I would imagine, best practices would be, after a certain period of time, identify another firm that doesn't have that level of intimacy, work with the town and fresh eyes, if you would, right?
Right.
Um, so I guess I'm just if you can maybe highlight how long have we been working with this firm, and what initiatives or perspectives might be coming down the pike in terms of looking at another firm who may look at it from a fresh eye.
No, that's a great point. And Justin and I have talked about this. I mean, I've been the finance director now for 2.5 years, whatever. So Roselli and Clark has been with the town, I want to say at least 10 years or so. But Justin and I we're preparing an RFP, request for proposals to go out for a new auditing firm. So and that happens every 3 years, I guess. So the engagement with Roselli and Clark was a 3-year contract, and fiscal 25 was the last year of their services for that contract. So we are preparing to go out to bid to do just that, get a fresh set of eyes and engage with another firm. So
Thank you. I
Just to
appreciate
add
that.
on to that, what Lori said, Ray, is a great question. One of the things when communities do tend to do, a 3-year or 5-year contract with one of these auditing firms, and once again, not unique to Bridgewater, is that a lot of firms there's not as many firms doing this work that they used to do. But one thing that communities do and make sure that's a part of this process when you do a long-term contract with an auditing firm is they also make sure like the person that's working on the project, it does shift. Like the partner may shift on an annual basis. So even though the firm may overall may have an intimacy with the community, like you had mentioned, they try to have new personnel take a look at it differently. But as Lori said, I mean, that was one of the things that when I came on board, this is my background, and Lori's been here now 2.5 years. We said, all right, it's probably time for us to do an RFP to see who else would be interested in doing this work. So, great question. We're looking at that.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad that that's on your radar. The other question that I have is um ahead of this firm coming to present their findings, their recommendations, etc. Um, how are we planning to market this so that the community can show up and they themselves can have an opportunity um, to either fill the academy room in or Zoom or however ways we're going to make this opportunity available to the community. Can you speak to that?
I'll give you this one, Justin.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I should take this one, Lori. Um, this would be one, it's a question about if you guys do a joint meeting, right? It's been recommended to MJ and I believe to the council president that this might be a good opportunity to do a joint meeting. We typically, post this as part of our agenda packet. If there's something that we want to put on Facebook to say that, we could do that. It's whatever process though ultimately that the council president and I believe your chair have a discussion on. That really isn't for us to decide because, for example, the council has rules of procedures how they run a meeting. Maybe it's more informed me. That's not my determination. That's a discussion with the council president, the council, and obviously with FinCom and discussion with them. So yeah, sorry, I'm almost punting that question, but it really isn't in my purview. I don't set the rules and the parameters of that meeting, Rick.
Yeah, I totally understand. I guess I'm more or less concerned about having the community be present so that they're
Yeah.
hearing the same things. And I realize that, all these, public initiatives and meetings are recorded. In my experience, people don't tend to go back and,
Yeah.
and check out the recordings. But if they can hear it live, in terms of where we are at as a town and hear it directly from, the auditors that we've hired. I think that would certainly give members of the community some perspective as to where we're at. And, certainly the questions from Nick and John, and Chris, I mean, those are great questions, to bring forth, before the auditors, while there's an audience of the community present to listen in. So I'm thinking maybe some form of campaign, and by no means am I suggesting the campaign equals spending dollars. There are ways to get the message out, not just on the website, but certainly letting the community know that once it's scheduled, show up.
Yeah, and that's great, Reg. I've been on the committee here with you guys for a little while, even before I was the finance director, right? So, and to MJ can also vouch for this is we we want to educate you as best we can with all the information there is. I mean that's how I feel, and I know Justin feels the same, but I look forward to these meetings and giving you the information, because once that information is shared, that becomes something that you can share. So I think, that's, we all have to just share it. Sorry, my silly light keeps going in and out, but yeah, I mean, I love giving the information to, the community forums we're doing now, these meetings, if anyone wants to come in, like I've said before, we talk to you guys to educate you so that you can take it out and educate the people that ask you questions, right? We want to give you, the facts and what we know. So, just sharing that word of there's going to be an audit presentation, and it's important that the community show up. So I applaud you for that, Reg.
Thank you. And then the final two thoughts that I have, MJ, and I'm just gonna put it before the group. I mean, I think item C, you know, I think item C is hasn't been resolved. I think there's, town council plays a critical role as part of item C. It sounds like to me that, in a spirit of collaboration, having the different groups present would be extremely helpful in terms of, getting some consensus around the bigger picture of item C in terms of our responsibilities. So I would advocate that, you know, um, unless if there are no other questions regarding item C, we can move this forward. So that way we're not beating a dead horse. Because I do think that there are other items that we do need to get through tonight. And item C cannot be fully discussed because town council isn't present. That's just what I would recommend.
Thank you for that, Ray. And going back to one of your questions, I actually wanted to follow up with that. Justin, for the RFP process, you had mentioned that there's not that many auditors left in the Commonwealth to do these types of things. I am familiar with Roselli and Clark, and I think the other one was Melanson and Heath, but I think they got bought out by CBiz. About how many are left in the Commonwealth? Oh, you're on mute, Justin.
Yeah, I saw that. I honestly don't know off the top of my head anymore. It's been a little bit since I've been the finance director, but you're right. That other firm got bought out. A lot of these firms have been getting bought out. I want to say off the top of my head, two or three, but we can find it. I mean, I know the large firms. I use another firm that has still stayed in business in Massachusetts. I just don't know if there's any others that have emerged during this time. But we'll definitely put that RFP out and we'll see what's out there. But we can follow up with how many are left now. A
Excellent.
lot of them are getting bought out. You're right.
It seems to be an industry that's starting to become less widespread and more cottage, as it were. But if folks didn't have any more questions regarding item A for new business, I know I did hear a member ask if we could take one of the items on this list out of order this evening, and I believe it was the water legislation discussion item. If that would be the pleasure of the committee, I can certainly ask for a motion if folks would be okay with that. I suspected that we would want to, if we're going to make a change to the agenda in that manner and take something out of order, we would need the motion for that. Is that correct, Josh?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That being said, is there a motion to that effect?
So made.
Made by Dr. Bennett. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that. And Derek, is that are you specifically stating the water issues as MJ had mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Second, yeah.
So motion made by Dr. Bennett, seconded by
MJ.
Mr. Plummer. Yes, Josh?
I think Mark had a question too.
Oh, yes. My apologies. Before we move on, we'll put that on hold for a quick second. Mr. Thomas, you did have your last question. I apologize. I was a little quick to jump ahead on our agenda, so we will give you your opportunity to ask your questions. Again, I apologize.
No, and I was just going to bring this up earlier, and Rig actually did a good job of bringing things back around, but now we're going the other way. All of these are valid points. Everybody deserves to be heard. Just as a chair of another committee in town, if we don't stick to the order of the agenda, the wheels come off these meetings real fast and the time slips away from us. I think it's very important that we stick to the items at hand in order on the agenda. And on this agenda, there's plenty of room for discussion on everything that we want to talk about today. So I just wanted to try to keep things on point so we keep things in a timely manner.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. That being said, there is a motion on the table. The motion would be to take something out of order. A yes vote would allow that to happen. A no vote would allow us to maintain our agenda as currently presented and as it was originally posted. So if you vote yes, you'd be bringing item E to be the next item, and everything else would follow from there, as it does on the agenda right now. But if you say no, we will continue forward with item B, the Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District Independent Audit discussion. So I do have the motion. I do have a second. Josh, can you take the roll call?
MJ,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Mark,
No.
Rig.
I'm fine with taking it out of order. Aye.
Thank you. The motion is approved.
All right, so just to recap, now that we've had that, so item E will now be item B, and everything after the new item B will be Bridgewater Rainham will be item C, Finance Committee responsibility discussion will be D, and Snow and Ice will now be E, and then F will stay the same. So we will now begin our discussion of water legislation. And I know that this was a point of discussion that was brought up last week that I know folks wanted to have a conversation about as to anything potentially in the offing related to our current water infrastructure concerns here in town as it relates to costs, as it could relate to upcoming projects, but also the potential for, as I understand, there may be potential litigation that the town could be party to. So with that said, I will open it up to members of the committee to ask questions. Any information that we do have presently that the town manager can give us or the finance director can give us, as well as it is germane to the topic. I apologize, my cat is in the way there. Then we can continue to discuss that, and then from that item forward, once we conclude that, we'll move on to the remainder of our agenda.
Okay, MJ. I'm sorry, I was just going to say, Justin, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
No, I would just say we didn't know what this agenda item was. I mean, I spoke with MJ. I don't know what it is, so I would want the FinCom to give us direction to what they would like to talk about. But the only thing that I would say, MJ, anything regarding, you mentioned litigation potential or that's not something that we would talk in the FinCom committee, obviously. If there's any litigation, that would be an item on executive session for the town council, and we haven't had anything regarding that. So I just want to put that out there in front. I don't want people to think we're dodgy or anything like that, but that wouldn't be a discussion we'd have.
I guess then I'll let you ask a question after this, Nick. Is the town collectively working on anything that relates to any upcoming legislation for borrowing for our water system or any parts of the projects right now? I think that are part of the long-term water plan. I think that goes through 2040 if I remember correctly. Correct?
It is. I mean, there's a robust capital improvement plan. If we could talk about that, we'll put another agenda item specifically for that. But the items that we've gone for loan authorization, the items that the FinCom has considered, I don't think the full consistency of this group has been there for all of them, but there was one in May of 2025, I believe, Lori, for High Street. I think that was $7.5 million or something like that. So that's loan authorization that's come. And then for this group, I do believe the rest of this group has been there. The other loan authorizations was $1.5 million recently. But there has been no other appropriation or loan authorization submitted outside of that.
I'll open up the questions now. Mr. Palmer, you have one, right?
One added piece to that, though, that I believe this committee should be apprised of, but what we're going to do too moving forward is I think any sort of finance related sort of memo or just I can't say discussion because many discussions at town council, we expect, you guys are listening into it. But in terms of any memo or anything that we submit to the town council, we'll forward it along to the FinCom. So you guys are in the loop regarding that. But we have been advocating for a grant. So the town, last week, we got approval to do reimbursements for a $2 million grant. So if one of those questions is, what are we spending on the infrastructure? That grant, we got some good news last week that we can submit reimbursements for that. But in terms of loan authorizations, there's nothing else that has been submitted.
Mr. Palmer, you had your question?
I do. So, Justin, did you mention just a few moments ago the loan authorization for the piping for well 10A and 10B? Is that what you were talking about? That was in May of this past year. That was like $7 or $8 million, somewhere in that vicinity.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you were talking about. Okay. And that money has been, I wasn't on the committee, so I don't recall.
Yep, that did get approval at that period.
And where is that in a progress basis? Because
No, I think, well, we'll send a presentation kind of where we're at on progress. We're having a presentation tomorrow at the council. I think that's part of the agenda. I mean, you guys can grab it. It is in the agenda, but we'll have Josh forward along to you all. It shows sort of where we're at in terms of the water situation. And it's actually a pretty clear timeline of where we're at the moment. So I'd probably say let's look at that first, because I do think that presentation provides a good amount of information.
okay, so we're going to get a copy of that before tomorrow night.
It's part of the agenda. Yes, it's available for you right now.
Okay, all right. Now, what are we doing after Middleborough is completed and we're done with that 3-month period? We're obviously going to be spending more money. Where is we going with that? Because we need water.
Excuse me, what was the last part you said?
I believe we need the water, correct? That we're getting.
We need water. Yeah. I guess in response to your question is we've highlighted that one, we would do an interconnection with Middleborough. We've highlighted that we're looking at the short-term and intermediate as well as long-term thing with the with treatment trailers. So initially it was iron and manganese because initially this, if people remember, it was a conversation about discolored water. So that was initially iron and manganese because 10A and 10B are untreated wells. So we have treatment trailers there for iron manganese, but we're also looking at treatment for PFAS at those wells. So those treatment trailers is what we're looking at. And then the next process would have to be an iteration about what other alternative sources of water to add to our capacity, whether that's Vernon Street wells, whether that's the Dighton plant, whether that's a proposed purchase of a property that's been talked about for another water source. So those would be the projects. And like I said, I think what'd be helpful is I'd have this conversation more with you guys. Take a look at the presentation because it does outline some of that stuff there.
Okay, so I've had a lot of conversations with residents that they're asking, what happens after Middleborough. What about the trailers that we're talking about? I think that's been mentioned before. What are we looking at for cost for those? I know, I don't know if you heard earlier, the town of Hanover, what they're dealing with just for PFAS. It's a pretty expensive proposition.
It is. So in terms of the trailers, that's specifically for 10A and 10B, right? That's specifically for 10A and 10B in that water source. But if your question is overall, if we're looking for PFAS overall for our system, the town had a capital plan that identified the Carver's Pond treatment plant and High Street treatment plant for PFAS. Obviously, I think for us, one of the things that we've said is I feel like municipalities are very reactive and we try to be strategic, and that's what we're trying to do. One of the things that we're going to have to take a look at, and I've talked with the council about this, we've mentioned it several times at the town council meetings, is looking for opportunities to address PFAS overall for the system a little bit sooner. But at the same time, I think you guys have addressed this capacity to pay and debt, right? Because, with PFAS remediation, that is a pretty expensive endeavor, but it is something that is a priority for us, it does seem like. And that's part of what the community budget sessions is, talking with the community. Ultimately, if the council and this community wants to fast track PFAS remediation, I think that's something that we'll be prepared to do. For example, we've met with Congressman Keating's office. We've met with the EPA. We've met with Senator Markey and Senator Warren's office about getting additional support at the federal level for PFAS remediation. So, I think that's something that overall we look as part of a long-term vision for the water system.
So let's say they come back and say, I'm sorry, Bridgewater, there is no federal money we can have. Is there any kind of a ballpark figure of what we might be looking at? I mean, because the town at large is going to be asking these questions.
Yeah, it's part of the water capital improvement plan, the water master plan. Lori, can you help me out with what that figure was? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I was more,
For what was in the capital improvement plan or the water master plan? I took my copy with me
oh,
home.
yep.
What was PFAS for Carvers and High Street? We have that in there.
I think it was about, now let me see. Let me
Yeah,
check.
let's look. I don't want to throw a number. I want to get the number. The number's in that packet, so we could give it to you.
Okay. Okay.
Well, while we're waiting for that, Nick, is it okay if we have Mr. Knowles' question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No, please. Other people are fine to get on there. I just give Laurie an opportunity to dig that up.
No worries. Rig, what's your question?
I think Justin was getting there, and certainly Nick had asked the questions around federal support, federal assistance, etc. I guess I'm curious to know, is there a task force of staff members or council members that's been assigned to maybe identify, other funding source, grants, loan forgiveness, FEMA disaster assistance, whatever it is, right? Like, do we have a task force that's specifically focusing on the water issues? And I realize, there's a lot of conversations, but do we have a specific task force within our current infrastructure who's kind of looking at different um, opportunities for us to fund this?
I love that
What
question, Rick,
Whatever the
because
name
that's
of it.
something that we've talked about at town council meetings too. And obviously, I understand everyone doesn't watch town council meetings or everyone doesn't read the memos that I put together, but absolutely there is. One of the things that we did, the town had a water strategies group previously, but I think we needed to increase the iteration of it, make sure there was more collaboration. But yes, we do. It's myself, obviously, it's our finance director, it's our DPW director, it's a water director, the CED director is a part of it. Obviously, Apex is who the town procures for engineering services is a part of this group. So yes, all of us have our eyes on it. And ultimately, the town council are the ultimate water commissioner. So, they obviously get information and they make ultimate decisions as well in terms of funding and water rates, et cetera. Because a misnomer is that the manager sets water rates, for example. That's not the case. It's actually the council who does that. So yeah, I think I would say it's all hands on deck approach, Rig.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
The PFAS for Carver's Pond is 7.4 million.
And what is that for, Laurie, again?
For Carver's Pond, the estimated cost for PFAS was 7.4 million.
And you pull that from the water master plan, right, Lori?
Yeah.
And so in there's a document, it's a 2024 water master plan that's on our website. Once again, encourage people to take a look at that because what the town had utilized, they utilized that water master plan as the roadblocks for the work that they wanted to do over these course of these years. But it does have information about, potential costs at that time too. We have to say at that time, because I think everyone's aware some costs have increased based on, yearly annual increases, inflation, et cetera. But it's around that cost, Nick.
Okay, so just last, I want to ask this question again. So it sounds like we're going to have to utilize these trailers, and I was basically asking because I've been asked several times the same question: what's that going to cost, or what's the estimate of what it's going to cost the town? Because we are in what is known as a water emergency. And we have to provide some of these issues because of the quality of the water that we have coming out of those two wells. Just kind of curious as to what they might be, because this is information that is important because this is going to be a long-term process.
Yeah, I think that's a question. Once again, I probably might defer a little bit in terms of a conversation with the council tomorrow, because part of that discussion is it needs to be a determination of, is this going to be a short-term rental? Is this a long-term decision? Do we procure those services? Because those costs are different. You could have a rental cost that's 100 something thousand a month, or versus purchasing it. You want to take a look at those because the benefit maybe to purchasing, you realize some savings, we add capacity, et cetera. So we'll have that information available tomorrow, but I think I want to give the respect to the town council at least to have that discussion first, and then we can follow with that answer directly to you all, Nick, because the council has to weigh in on that, right?
Mm-hmm. They do.
As a follow-up to Nick's question, Justin, I know giving due deference to the council for their meeting tomorrow, have, I guess I'm not sure if this would be a germane question, but have you obtained any like indication which way the council would be supportive of or opposition to? I would think that a long-term purchase would be beneficial in one regard, but certainly with the costs of leasing and, you know, any types of
No.
procurement agreements or any statements of, you know, memorandums of agreement that we would have with any of these companies, I suspect that the cost could be a bit higher. Have you received any indication from our colleagues on the council as to which direction they might potentially go?
No, and I'm not honestly, MJ, I wouldn't speak for the council. I obviously let them speak for themselves. So no, I don't have any information regarding that. You know, obviously want to have this discussion with them. There's a lot of information that we hope to present tomorrow. We're having Apex come to present that information, who does a lot of that work. So I anticipate they'll have some questions. They'll have different thoughts because I have 9. Now I have 8, but you know, you have 9 counselors who all have various opinions on this, to be honest with you, on a whole host of topics related to water. So it wouldn't be right for me to say.
Okay. Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome.
Did any other members have any questions regarding this particular part of our conversation tonight? Okay.
I do, just further information, I do plan on providing another memo to the council a little bit further after, in preparation for the presentation tomorrow, and I will make sure that that memo I distribute to Josh, so it gets forwarded along to you all as well. It won't be so high level finance wise. I think it just gives an update of kind of things of what we've done in terms of the water system, et cetera. But I think it's good to have that context because even Nick and I think many members of your FinCom have said you get a lot of questions from the community, right? And so it's important for you to be armed with this information as well. So I will make sure that gets forwarded along.
Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome.
Did any other members have any questions?
One question, MJ. So
Sure thing, Mr. Higgins.
Justin and Lori, do we know if we kind of anticipate, is this going to affect the revenues of the town and the growth of the town? And if so, till what period of time? So, I mean,
when you ask the revenue and the growth, what do you mean by that, John? So I can understand your question.
Well, the values of the property in town, the new properties that would come online. I know, Lori, when you put together numbers, you put a growth component in there that we've seen every year.
Okay.
So without being able to hook up projects or whatever, do we have an idea from a financial standpoint how that's going to affect the town and how long will it affect the town?
Love that question. Lori, I can respond to, but if you want to do it first pass, because we talked exactly about this in our community budget session. We spent a little bit of time for that. But Lori, you want to talk
Yeah.
first?
Well, it's like the perfect question, right? For us doing our budgets. When we're projecting out what, you know, our revenue is going to be, our new growth obviously will fall flat. And so what's our biggest revenue is our tax levy, 2.5% plus new growth. Right now we plug it in, you know, our assessor's busy working right now trying to get us something that from things that have just come online in 2025. But yeah, we're really, Justin and I are very concerned, obviously, that if we can't have new things come online, obviously there's no new growth and then there's even less new revenue. So it's a big, I mean, that's the biggest, largest revenue source that the town has for both the school and for the town side. So it's huge and it's scary, honestly.
And so
When do
to
you
add,
think okay, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say briefly, just to add to what Lori's saying there is, you know, obviously in this iteration of the budget that we'll have, we gave a preliminary budget forecast. That number is conservative. I think we used $200,000. Maybe you will wait for the chief assessor to give us her final recommendation there. But one of the things that's really important to understand here is during this emergency water declaration, I was very clear and specific about saying that during this process, that for moving forward during this emergency declaration, that we were not allowing any new tie-ins for non-approved projects. So naturally, that has a consequence on new growth and construction that goes in town. But also, as a point of information and reference, because I know this is another question that people have asked, it's not in the purview of the town manager to declare a moratorium for the community moving forward. That's a town council decision. So
Correct.
ultimately, town council has to just determine if, hey, do we put a moratorium on all growth moving forward, et cetera. On my end, in terms of the water emergency declaration, I was able to say exactly what we were able to do there in terms of non-approved projects. But you're right, John. Ultimately, that has an effect on our budget moving forward because those projects naturally won't come online if this isn't resolved, and that effectively reduces your revenue for forthcoming budgets.
Isn't this the perfect Bateson's double bind here, where you're looking at the fact that we're going to be spending money? You just mentioned a short while ago that those trailers, they could cost one heck of a lot of money, depending on how we end up putting those in. And then we're looking at the fact that that's impacting the fact that we can't add any growth. So that's what we're supposed to be wrangling with. And the town's going to be facing that. Other communities are already doing that.
Yeah.
And hence, once again, it goes back to what our role is supposed to be, which is giving recommendations. And I agree with you, Justin, that it's not, for your decision to take and say, yep, we should have a moratorium on new building. That is definitely the town council. They have to make a decision on that, even though the water emergency, for all intent and purposes, is kind of doing it for them in many respects. That also is going to be interesting to see what DEP comes back with in the supposedly in the near future. So there's a lot going on here, and this water issue it's probably the most massive thing that I've seen in this town in quite a few years that we're grappling with. Unfortunately, it's been a long time coming also.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Justin, you just walked into this.
You don't have to say sorry. I think we should have this should be on the agenda item in the future so we can talk about it more. But in terms of, sorry, look, I'm happy to be here. It's an issue that you're right. The town has been grappling for a while because it's been grappling with, all right, do we allow more new construction to help mitigate some of these costs of the capital improvement projects that are necessary to do? Because and I can't speak for prior councilors or prior managers. That's not what I do. That's not anything that I've done. But when I look at it and I sit back and I evaluate, they've been grappling with the costs on users, right? They haven't want to put all the expenses on the existing users, and they've tried to grapple with new growth to offset some of those costs. But that has also put us in the position that we're in too, right? So I think one of the things is you got to look at this holistically. We've got to resolve the issue in terms of water supply at the moment, right? Well, water quality, water supply. Initially, it was a discolored water conversation. Now it's water supply. Resolve that, but then be able to take a step back and indicate what direction do we want to go? What are the solutions to these issues long terms? And that requires a more strategic conversation rather than just being reactive. So that's what the mission is. I'm excited about that work. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but we're going to get it done. I want people to know that we're going to get it done.
If I can give a little bit of perspective.
Nick, could I just ask one thing?
Yeah, I'm sorry, John.
Detail before you go on.
I'm sorry.
So, Lori or Justin, could you send the committee just what the growth figure was in the 2026 budget, or what we anticipate, so that we'd have an idea how much money we're talking about here? Because you used the word very scary. Scary is relative to different people. It means different things. So, some kind of an estimate of what's at play in 2027 would be helpful.
When you say 20, because you referenced 26 just a minute ago, John, or do you mean 27? Which one?
Yeah, so
comparison
I'm anticipating for 2027, and we probably should have pretty good numbers for 26 already, right? Or no?
Yeah, 26 was part of the budget, so Lori can speak to that. But in 27, I just meant in the preliminary budget forecast that we sent over to you, we're using $200,000.
So that's the whole amount that we're talking about that's in play.
At the moment, when I submitted that preliminary budget forecast at the beginning of February, that was the figure.
In 2026, the actual number was 521,000. So we estimated about 300,000 in our preliminary, I think, but it was 521,000, which is the lowest it's been probably in the last 8 years. So
Okay, all right. Well, that helps the I think that would help the committee because we're going to go from 521 to either 200 or 0. We're not sure. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Nick, did you have an additional point you wanted to contribute? I know you said you wanted to make an additional comment.
I've lost my train of thought.
That is
So
okay. It's Monday night. These things
let us
happen.
move forward. It's a product of age. I'm going to blame it on that. I'm only 25, but I'm older 25. So
But yeah, all right.
so yes, I will yield my time to someone else.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Did any other members have any questions on this particular item this evening?
No, madam.
Yes, Dr. Bennett.
No, madam.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. All right, so if there is no further discussion, we will move on to our new item, item C, which would be Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District Independent Audit discussion. So this would probably be relative to a point made during our last meeting where folks wanted to get a better idea of what the audit from the independent auditors that the town of Bridgewater and Rainham had paid for to conduct for the Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District. I know there were several items that were brought up as concerns on the whole, which precipitated the procurement of this audit service. And I know that I had given that to Josh to have me on the agenda tonight. I am familiar with right now as to update folks. I know that there is going to be a conversation about the audit itself during, I believe, the next meeting of the Bridgewater Rainham School Committee. I believe that is taking place on Wednesday this week. Let's see.
March 18th, I
March
believe.
18th is actually next week. I apologize. And my dates confused. Their budget meeting is Wednesday night. The school district's independent audit is on the 18th. I will certainly stress to folks, I don't know what the pleasure of the committee would be if they all wish to attend, because that way, if it does happen that we have more than 3 people in attendance, we would certainly have to post it as us being present, if I remember correctly. But it is something to keep in mind. I know I'm going to attend the meeting just because I want to know what the nature of the audit is going to be. And I know the public in attendance this evening will most likely also be in attendance there as well. But outside of that, I know we were going to have a conversation about what this might potentially entail. And if there was any advanced information that we might be able to glean from this audit, knowing that there are now results that can be shared with us in the next couple of weeks. That being said, I will open it up to Justin to give us a little bit more information, and then we'll have members ask questions.
So, in this one, we're not going to have too much more information to provide, but I do want to clarify. I do think they were providing the invitation for a joint meeting for all of the member communities, similar to the preliminary budget meeting. I will clarify with Judy and the superintendent tomorrow, but I believe that was the intent. So I think the invitation is for the FinCom to join as a whole, but Josh can confirm once I get that information. But assuming that is the case, and I mean that's a great opportunity for the FinCom to ask any questions. I know that in the email that was forwarded to you, Madam Chair, and to Josh, they asked that if there were any questions that they wanted to have answered, that they submit them in advance. And I believe a copy of the final report is going to be given no later than the end of business day Wednesday. So that obviously can be shared with the FinCom as well. But that's really all the information that we have. I think it is a joint workshop, joint discussion, and I do believe you guys are invited. You were on the email, Madam Chair.
Yes. I did receive the invite. I think it was a blind carbon copy, but that I would assume was also shared with the other members of the committee. But since it may only have been just me, then I would hope that we can share that invite with members of the committee so that they can submit their questions. If I remember correctly, Josh, on the email from Ms. McDougall, was it for just the committee chair to submit questions, or was it anybody from the public, or
Was
I
that the email that I had forwarded from her with the dates?
I think so.
Yep, I sent that to the whole committee.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I highlighted a couple dates.
Okay. Excellent.
Yes, because I responded to you, Josh. I'm not going to be in town, and there's no method for outside communication.
Yep, that's
So
right.
I won't be able to. I would love to ask a few questions, but
But John, I would say this, if you do have some questions, I don't know the parameters of this meeting because it's fast moving. I anticipate they're probably going to record it, but you can submit your questions to them, to Superintendent Powers. That should be highlighted in that email. And they did mention that those questions are welcome, and if possible, they'll definitely try to address them. So I do encourage the Finance Committee to submit questions because I know you guys do have several of them. I encourage you to submit them. And so
how'd
hopefully
you
we
know
can
I had a
answer.
question, Justin?
Oh, I would wager on that, my friend,
You
along
want me
with
to-
other members of the committee. Believe me.
The inquisitive nature of my colleagues is, I would say, beyond compare. And John, I encourage you to send those questions. And, if you want to send them to Josh too, I'd certainly want to see what some of them are too. Because if I can at least speak to them for you on your behalf, I can at least share that with the school committee if there's an opportunity to ask questions at that point.
You know what? I won't ask any questions on the actual audit because nobody has seen anything. The only thing I will ask is I did listen in to the committee or to the school committee last week, and they talked about they were getting updates, and so I have a concern about that. So I guess my question would be to you, MJ, and to you, Justin, if you got updates, because I do know that it was supposed to be an independent audit.
I've received no
So
updates.
that would be
If
a
you're asking me
question.
directly, I've received no updates. I have no information. I will learn that information at this meeting. And once again, they did say that it seems like the final report will be provided by Wednesday this week. That's what was in that email. But I've received nothing outside of that.
I think the comment was that there's basically no findings or not, and I don't know how you would know that if you're having an independent audit, but that would be my only question. Could you, and I can submit that in writing, but just to give you guys a heads up, if you go back and listen to the school committee meeting, it seems like the independent part of it, there's been stuff already put out there. So, and you two should be aware as well as town man or town council, right? Or Johnny Loretti or whoever the case may be. But that's all I got to say. I'll be quiet now.
Indeed. I have a question, MJ.
Right now with the situation.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Palmieri. Sorry.
We I know that they voted on the contract for the superintendent, and I have several questions on that. But is there any reason why we were not or could not be part of at least getting some information as to what they're looking at relative to possible increases in salaries, whether it's the staff or the superintendent or any of them, as well as increases in their benefits as well. I mean, this is still tax dollars coming out of the town of Bridgewater at 60%. So I think it's incumbent upon them to let us know kind of where they are, what they're looking at, as opposed to then saying, well, here it is. We just settled the contract with with the teachers, for instance, and they're got an X% raise for 3 years or whatever that be. Same with the superintendent's salary going up. Knowing that we're going to have a tough year. I don't know how many years, but at least a tough year coming up. So there's a lot going on here, and I think that should be part of. I don't know what they do with the Raynham Finance Committee, but I can tell you, obviously, you know this just as well as we do. We have not seen very much information.
I'm actually, to add to that, Nick, I'm actually kind of curious about that. I'm wondering, Justin, by virtue of the fact that Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District, per Chapter 70, is its own independent entity, as it were. I mean, it's almost like its own separate municipality, but its funding sources are two separate towns. Jurisdictionally, would a finance committee on either side of the town boundary have that access in that regard, or would it just stays at the school committee level and stays within the school district? Because I would think if there's budget oversight on the part of either the Rainham Advisory Board or the Bridgewater Finance Committee, that we would have been pulled into that at that part of the process. I think that's one of the concerns and frustrations is that action was taken by the school district, but those that have financial or fiduciary responsibility to inform and warn the municipalities of those changes, we weren't necessarily brought into the loop. But I think that might be by the design, unfortunately, of how a regional school district operates. Am I correct on that, Justin?
You're right. I mean, to keep it simple, we often hear the iteration is the schools don't fund themselves, correct? But we also don't control their expenditures. That is at the school committee level. But what I would say is that one of the key words that I've been saying since I've been here, collaboration, 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 I think is important. Being cognizant, we're going into a tough budget, for example, providing information to all these sources, I think is incumbent on every group. But neither FinCom has really much control over the school expenditures, to be honest with you. It's more of an appropriation basis. Once the appropriation is done, then it's in the purview of the school committee.
So effectively, to build on your, I think I might be able to anticipate your question, Nick. So effectively, we're giving them the money, but they're making the determination that that's what they're going to actually spend it on. Is that correct? Nick, did I get that?
That's ultimately how it works.
So who are the watchdogs then when you have a situation like that? How can we make any kind of recommendations as we are supposed to do per the charter to the schools? It doesn't seem fair to the towns, both towns, in this case, that they are, yes, an ISD. I understand that. But that ISD still needs funding. And Justin, what you said is true. They don't fund themselves. That means they are getting their money from somewhere. There has to be some kind of, as your word, collaboration. I don't think I've seen too much of that, to be very honest with you. And having served on a school committee, I can tell you that it's a very interesting scenario that occurs, especially when you're dealing with, with these regional school districts. So just the curiosity, what is the response to MJ's question?
I think you've heard a lot from me. I saw Lori unmute herself, so I'm gonna let Lori chime in too. I mean, my position isn't changing there, but go ahead,
Well, it's really the school committee from the representatives of the town. I mean, that they can be your best source of information, what they're voting on, because they're the ones taking the vote on all the appropriations of the school. So it's getting the town's representatives who are on the school committee to maybe you could invite them to one of your meetings.
Mm-hmm. MJ, perhaps a visit by you to their meeting with all of that information, as Laurie just astutely put, that they should be sharing this information pre-budget. So we have some idea where this is going, and that we can tell them what we know about the town. Mm-hmm. And what we see is the future here relative to the availability of funds. Yeah. Because, I'm hearing talk already that there's a possibility of looking for a potential override. And, that's not the kind of road that you want to go down on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that, Nick. And yes, I'm more than happy to go to the school committee's next meeting. I know they have their budget meeting on Wednesday. I can certainly ask that I know we may be past a point on a certain aspect of the budget process, but I think it is important and certainly I would hope it would be helpful to FinCom, but also to our colleagues on the advisory board in Rainham as well, to try to give us a little bit more openness on the part of the school committee to share their budgetary information with us at that process, to create that collaboration, to create that cross-border integration of budget discussion. Because right now, as we've seen on our side of things here, when it comes to interacting with the town council, we're trying to get that going. And I think this provides an opportunity, especially this conversation that we've had this evening, especially your points, Nick, that it is something that I don't think it was ever broached before previously, but we do need to have it now going forward because of the deep importance to what we could potentially be facing in the near and long term. It's better to have us be in the loop on that, because ultimately, if the school committee says they want to move forward with something, we need to be able to say to the public, this is what they've asked us to do. They're looking for our input on it. What do you folks say? What do you think? And then we can provide that guidance back to them and say, okay, we know the school committee is looking at it from this perspective, but have you considered this option or this idea or this potential route for us to address this financial matter? I think that's something that I'm more than happy to steer and bring to them. I haven't had a chance to look at their agenda fully. I know that it's basically supposed to be the budget hearing itself, but I expect that there will be a public comment period. I am more than happy to speak on behalf of the finance committee, if that is their will, to encourage the school committee to at least give us a little bit more due consideration as part of that budgetary process. So I can definitely more than happy to be able to do that. If that is the will of the committee, I'm more than happy to do that.
I think, John, I know that you've made this comment before in our meetings, that based on some of the increases that we've seen relative to the increases in the salaries as well as their benefits, the course is unsustainable if this continues. And Justin, you may have coined the word of the night with the collaboration aspect of this. I don't think I've seen that, relative to the schools and the town, period. And it's important because I think there will come that point of no return, and that frightens me.
Thank you, Nick.
So MJ and anybody else on the committee, I have gone out to the school as I did with Lori as well. And I do have all their last 3 years detailed information, and I've put it into my own database, I guess I'll call it. I'll be happy to share the info with you. It's quite eye-opening to see. And then if you want to see it, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. You can take a look at it. It's off of their financials. So it's down to the account line. So
John, I definitely appreciate if you can send that along. That would be super helpful and might help me in my conversation with the school committee.
Most certainly will. Give me a time when you're available, because I put together this massive pivot table. So you just got to be careful, but I'll be more than happy to share it with you. So it does help break it down instead of in the big buckets that you get. So I put them through the same torture I put you through, Lori. So, but one other point though is, does it create any kind of an issue as you're in contract negotiations here on the town side that the superintendent gets a 6% pay raise, or does that not even affect anybody in the town?
No, I'm not going to speak directly to the contract, but I would say anytime you're negotiating with anyone, they're looking at comparable communities, comparable contracts, et cetera. So everyone looks at that information. So that's something that we navigate when negotiating with everybody, collective bargaining groups, independent people, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you, Justin, and thank you, John. Justin, just so I know, since John's going to be able to share his spreadsheet with me, the information regarding that, will it be okay for me to speak with him as chair regarding the spreadsheet if he needs to give me any additional information about it, any guidance, or should he just give me like a written summary along with it?
Well, you guys are talking, it's not a quorum, it's just between you two. You know, it
Right.
would be an issue, for example, just to play that out for the committee. It'd be an issue if John had a session where all the committee members came in and he was walking through them and you're discussing business that's going to be before you. That would be a violation. But in terms of him sharing information to you all and you individually having a conversation with him, as long as it's not a quorum, that isn't an issue.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
excellent. John, I'll message you in the morning if you have a specific time of day that you want to have a chance to talk over the phone or meet in person to go over the spreadsheet.
Tomorrow's golfing day, so any day after that is good.
Are you sure you can't just delay your tea time?
No importance, but yeah, maybe Thursday then, MJ.
That works for me. I have a few days off this week, so I'm more than happy to work with your schedule in mind. Just give me some ideas of times on Thursday. We'll take it from there. And also, I'm gonna
Early.
want to know exactly some tips on how to tee off on the course.
I didn't say I'm a good
John, what
golfer.
about the 19th? John, what about the 19th hole?
Guys, we're wasting everybody's time here. I'll help you, yeah, for sure. All
All right.
See
Thank
you.
you, John. I appreciate it. If there aren't any other questions regarding this part of it, we can move on to the next item, which would be Finance Committee responsibilities discussion. Okay. All right, we will move on to that item, Finance Committee responsibilities discussion. This was requested by members of the committee to discuss what our responsibilities and roles are pursuant to the charter and the administrative code, how we operate as being that advice and consent arm of the town government to be able to provide guidance to our colleagues on the town council to help them make better informed decisions and to also create further collaboration and opportunities to be able to effectively do our job as a finance committee, but also provide the public their ability to maintain their trust in the processes of the financial aspect of town government, given the fact that local governance is a complex animal in and of itself. Municipal finance is one of the most unique but also the most complex aspects of it. While turning on a light is an important thing, trying to make sure you can fund it and do a long-term budget perspective on it is also significantly more important. But that being said, we are constitutionally allowed to do certain things per the home rule charter, but also the administrative code. But the conversation should be more of how can we use that effectively to be the advice and consent arm to tell or at least share with the town council. These are items that we need to look at. This is where we have opportunity to talk. So I think right now is a great opportunity for us to ask questions in open form here, and to also rhetorically ask what generally should be our purpose, but also to gain that input and guidance as well from the town manager. So I will definitely open it up to members to ask their questions. I do certainly hope everybody read the charter and read the admin code, so we can at least ask some very informed questions.
I think I've said my piece many times, so I'm going to defer.
Alrighty, Mr. Palmieri. So I will recognize that as you yielding your balance of your time to the remaining membership.
I have indeed.
All right. Did any other members have any questions or items of point? I feel like the one thing that we can do is our presence is certainly generally important. From a perspective of when we do take our votes, I feel like, and this is just my own personal opinion as chair, that our will from the committee should be broadened and shared with the council. Something I do already is provide memo to the town council, but I also do occasionally have the ability to go to town council, speak to them in an open forum part of it, but knowing that can have some limitations as well. Is it something that maybe we perhaps as part of our collaboration with town council, and I'm just spitballing this and throwing it out there, and Justin, you can help me with this. If we were to encourage the town council to give us at least 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes of discussion points on their agendas when items that have come from the Finance Committee are brought back to them for a final decision, to allow us to have that back and forth so that they can have greater guidance from us. Is that something that we could effectively do, recognizing what we do have under the charter and under the admin code?
MJ, if you're asking me that, that once again, not in my purview. That's going to be a decision for the council as a whole. I would recommend, if that's something you want to do, you bring it up to the council president and to the rest of the council, and they can have a discussion item regarding that. They ultimately set the procedures, and another thing is, it's just not the town manager who sets the agenda on the town council. It's the town council president as well. So that would be my recommendation. If that's something you want to do, I would definitely recommend sending that along to Josh and having a conversation with the council.
Okay. All right. I would ask, are there any other items that members would want me to include in such a message? I already know how I believe the committee wants that type of overture to be presented. But if there's any particular language or particular point of note that you feel would be most important to share as part of that note, but also my ability to go before council and let them know what the committee is thinking, I want to be able to include that, make sure everything is inclusive of what our committee is seeking to do, but also to ensure that we can have that further integration in the conversations.
The only thing I would say is, I think Rick brought this up in the beginning of the meeting, is that, I mean, the fact that we're even having the meeting today, and we've had some good discussions today, this is probably the first meaningful discussions we've had as a group. And so to go and further responsibilities and discussions, I think this thing has to evolve a little bit, but I'm at least happy we can have a forum to have the discussions. So that's just my opinion. And I appreciate the fact that we put it all together.
Thank you, John. So from that, then, because this is an evolution, this is a development, we're at the initial stages of how we get this off the ground, start to build that level of integration. So I appreciate that, John. That's something I will try to include tomorrow when I do go to the council and present that to them.
If I may, I'm sorry, I'm going back on my word for a moment, but the charter is very clear, and if we follow the charter and do what it says we are supposed to be doing, it's very simple. And I agree with you, John. It is evolving, and MJ, and both you, Laurie, and Justin. I'm sorry you had to listen to all of this, but these are the issues. We hear this statement in government all the time, and you know what that is? But this is the way it's always been done, quote unquote. Well, you know what? Doesn't mean it's the right way, and we're entering uncharted territory here in the town of Bridgewater right at the moment. And I think we need all the guidance we can get. We've got some extremely smart people out in the audience right here, as well as those in the town. I mean, people have expertises that we couldn't even touch, and it's good to get people involved, but they need to know what's going on in order to do that. Mm-hmm. So, I feel that our role is advisory, as it says, and ministerial. Well, advisory is advice. We can't give advice if we don't have the information. And if we have the information, we have to give advice. And if they don't take it, well, at least we're on record as having an opinion. And much like many other things, you have other groups in the town, other committees that also are advisory and sometimes points in nature. And if they're not adhered to or listened to, well, what is it? The devil's in the details, so to speak. So that's my opinion. It's the chart is pretty clear. And you know what, MJ, I think if you use that as your base, we'll be in excellent shape.
And I will. Thank you, Nick. if there aren't any other questions or items of note that we can include in this discussion, we'll move on to our next item, snow and ice FY26 discussion. And I know
Mhm.
this was put on, oh, did you say something, Dr. Bennett?
Oh, no.
Okay. I know that this was something that was this was requested also, if I recall, at the last meeting to get a better understanding of what snow and ice and deficit actually looks like, how it functions. For the uninitiated who may not necessarily understand it, just as an overall, and Justin, you can help me with this. Snow and ice is one of those items in municipal budgeting that you can actually legally negative spend because snow and ice has to be removed and roads have to be plowed and roads have to be treated, especially during some of the nastiest of snowstorms, including the blizzard that we had just about a week or so ago. This is one of those items that you legally under law can actually go into the negative on. And I know that the material that Laurie sent us gave us at least a 3 fiscal year overview as to what it was before. Some would probably see that the lowest was somewhere in the 220s range, and then this year was a little over 900 some odd $1,000. And that is, that is going to be something that Justin can speak to a little bit more to. But just for the outset of it, this is actually one of the few things that we actually can do a negative spend on, and it is within the boundaries of Massachusetts general law. So with that, I will hand it over to Justin and also to Laurie as well.
I'm gonna tap in the relief. Lori's gonna handle this one. Our plan was Lori to address this one, but we did give you a 3-year rundown so we could give you understanding of how it works. But you're spot on. This is one you can deficit spend, MJ.
So thank you. So most communities also, some communities budget high, some communities budget low, but without predicting what your winter's going to look like, you never know. So it's hard for communities to budget too much because what if it doesn't get snow and you have this money that you're not spending? So anyway, we budget the same every year, which is about less than $100,000. That we know we can spend if we need to. So this storm, it probably costs anywhere from like 500 to 600,000. So we're looking at a current deficit of about about $935,000. So what that means is we first of all, MEMA sent us a notice, which is the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. So in coordination with FEMA, who's the federal MEMA agent, emergency operations, they did they had us fill out in all the communities who were affected by this storm, an IDA. It's an initial damage assessment. So what we did was have all of our departments, mostly it was DPW. We had some fire overtime and maybe some police overtime and some other incidentals, but it's mostly the DPW and the highway, and the water and sewer if they were plowing out their treatment plant. So we completed that form, which they will only allow you to fill out a 48-hour space from either when the emergency was declared or whatever the highest. If you spent more Tuesday to Wednesday, the 48 hours, or Sunday to Monday or whatever. So we picked a window and we come up with in that window of about $402,000. So we filled out that form, sent it along, and now we just wait to hopefully see what they'll collect all of these assessments from all the communities and determine if
I have no wish to.
there's a threshold that each community will meet to get some federal funding help. So we're hoping for that. And what happens with some of the other storms that have emergencies declared is, you have a lot of forms to fill out. You fill out the cost of the equipment, if there are any damaged equipment, personnel costs, and they also let you apply fringe benefits and everything. So if you're eligible for it, it's I would say, I don't know, what's your experience, Justin? It's probably like a year or two out that you don't get the money back, but it comes back into the general fund in either way. So some communities will isolate that cost and put the cost of that you're expected to get a reimbursement for and leave it in a deficit until you get the money in. But DLS and it's different with different whoever's in charge over there. But what we'll do is we'll raise it on the recap, which means we deficit fund the amount. We have the total amount of the deficit at the end of the year. We carry it onto our books as a deficit, and then when we send the tax bills out in November, December, when we set the tax rate, we have to raise that amount then. So it kind of comes off of our budget for 27. So and if you look at our sources and uses, we're still in the works of our original estimate was like 500,000. So now, we're already going down into the hole a little bit more. But this is all the other communities do it this way, and I think I'm rambling now, so I'm gonna stop. But if you have any questions, it's late. I've had a long day, so I apologize if I started rambling. But we're doing everything we can to recoup any costs that we're able to with the government and the state. So.
The only
Lori,
thing I
is
would add
that-
to Lori, because then I know you have some questions. You asked about FEMA. Typically, the turnaround has generally been quick. It's usually within a year, but I do put this asterisk. Lately, some turnaround with FEMA has taken a little bit longer. So obviously, we'll have to navigate that with, the administration and MEMA, who's really our resource to get FEMA and federal funds. And MEMA is the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. So I think that's the only thing you asked.
Justin, I do have a follow-up question on that. Because of the way snow and ice deficits are handled in the Commonwealth, in the event that an emergency declaration from the federal government isn't declared, which would obviously open up additional funding resources to reimburse, is it solely on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to reimburse towns and cities for their snow and ice deficits? And if so, are you familiar with which fund it comes out of at the state level? I assume it comes out of probably maybe Chapter 90 funds, but I'm hesitant to say anything about that at that point, because I'm not really necessarily encountered it on this end as a finance committee member. I vaguely remember how it was handled by the town and through the state years back, because we had a couple years where we did have some very nasty snowstorms. 2015 comes to mind. 2009 comes to mind. We had, I think, one year. I think we had, and Laura, you probably have the data on this. I think one of the highest years we had a snow and ice deficit was like roughly $2 million. Because I think that actually was 2015. In the event the federal government does not give reimbursement, does the Commonwealth provide reimbursement?
No, I can take that, Justin.
Yeah,
No,
Lori.
so the Commonwealth won't reimburse us, but what they did in 15 and some of the other heavy years is they allowed communities to raise it over a 3-year period. So you didn't have to take the hit all at once. So, but the town has to raise those funds. Some towns might take it out of their stabilization or another fund, or, you just raise it when, if you can do it during the recap process. But the state won't give you any of that money. So unfortunately.
So this is a wait and see situation here, is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty, I mean, we'll be at $1 million, I'm sure, by the time the year closes, we'll be at least in $1 million. But a lot of communities down the South Shore here in the Cape, they're gonna really be hurting, and so I'm almost, I get my fingers crossed, but I'm pretty sure that we will get some FEMA help. But if we don't, we'll have that. Hopefully, we'll be able to work with the DLS and not have to come up with it in 1-year period. But there'll be a little bit of flexibility, I hope.
To that question, Laurie, because we'd probably get it back on the recap sheet, would that involve us potentially? Would that potentially involve free cash when it is certified? Would that reduce the amount of the snow and ice deficit if that is one of the mechanisms?
Well, that's certainly an option that you can do. But when you raise it on the recap, you try to find it in your levy, meaning, because when we do preliminary, we know what the levy's gonna be, but you know, we can tweak our revenues if we see more revenue coming in but yeah, we can also use free cash to fund it. There's a little bit of flexibility with different mannerisms, and that will be you know, brought a conversation for the council at that time for an appropriation, how to handle. And you guys will weigh in as well.
Thank you, Lori. Did any other members have any other questions?
I do. I'm not quite sure I'm understanding. So when you say you put it into the levy, that means it's going to get put into the property tax rate. Or if we pay through it through free cash, then it doesn't get put in. Because if we leave it as a deficit, you're saying we have to make that up in 2027, and then that will get put into the property tax rate, correct?
Well, it'll be in yeah, so when we say raise it, so if you look at the sources and uses, we're already estimating. We don't like put in our revenues, but we're estimating that we're going to cover a certain deficit from the year before. So I don't know, did I confuse you with that?
No, but if we use free cash for it, then the deficit amount gets wiped out and doesn't get carried over to the next year.
Yeah,
Right.
you can do the free cash, but you know, free cash isn't certified until the fall. So when you close your books, I mean, it's shown as a deficit then, but because of the way the state allows us to have that as a deficit. And then if we raise it on the recap, meaning, you know, there might be some room in the levy, or there might be a combination of funding it from another source, or we might hold off if we're allowed to do it the next year. But I mean, there's different avenues, so it'll be up to the community and the council and addressed it when we know the final number for that.
That was a
But
good
do you
question,
understand
Lori.
what I'm saying about raising it though, John?
I do, but it sounds like to me that it could get put into the property tax rate next year or put in over the next 3 years to go pay this thing off.
No. So if you look in the sources, so when we're saying we get this amount of revenue and then here's our expenses, and we're already like, it's not an expense in our 27 budget, but it's something that we have to raise on the recap. So
Well, yeah, it's going to
on
be
the
carried
bottom.
over from
So it's
26. Kinda
already
like- yeah.
it's already in the revenue. Like the tax bills don't go up one way or another. It's just something that we have to pay for. You know, but it is already included in our estimates.
Okay. Okay.
But not a million. I think, like I said earlier, it's not the million we've included, so.
And then if it comes back and we get this a year and a half from now, then that just goes into the general fund to be spent then.
Yeah, that's how FEMA works. Yep.
Yep.
Goes right back into the general fund.
That's what I thought. Mhm.
Thank you.
Very good questions, gentlemen. Did anybody else have any other questions regarding snow and ice?
We're tired of it.
Oh, trust me,
Madam Chair?
winter's end can't
You asked
come
for a
soon enough.
comment.
Oh, Ray, did you say something?
I do have a question. I do have a question.
Sure. What do you have?
Thank you. Lori, I know you were outlining, you know, the reimbursement, what it covers. Does that include infrastructure with respect to roads, signs, things that were damaged? I know you had mentioned equipment damage, but does that include, you know, physical infrastructure like signs, street signs, roads, etc.?
I think like if it's a road, certain signs or if we have to have damage enough for an insurance claim, I think we can add it on there. But I guess replacing signs and things like that, yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of them that need to be replaced. So I would say, you know, if we get eligible for, we'll put in whatever we can, you know, legally.
Is
And
there?
to your point, yeah.
Oh,
To
sorry,
your
go ahead.
point- sorry. To your point, Lori, any insurance claims would probably come through our insurance through Maya, and then we would then be able to account that as a reimbursable from MEMA and FEMA when that money would come through if we get the reimbursement for it.
Well, we couldn't get double, you know, accounted for, but if like say there was some infrastructure, say like the roof or something, and you know, the insurance, you had a deductible. We could probably get the deductible back or something
Okay.
like that. But, however, whatever the guidelines are. But I think stop signs and things like that, if the highway department has a list of stop signs, they cost this, sure, I think we could get them reimbursed. But potholes and things like that's not any way to quantify. So I don't see the infrastructure that I think as far as roadways goes. Does that
Bree, did
help,
you-
Rick?
It did. Thank you. I was curious to know,
The
what
depth,
can we
yeah.
get reimbursed for?
Mhm.
Thank you.
They tend to be very specific about what you can. When you do these process, they have like a workbook, and it pretty in depth in terms of the guidelines, Lori said, of what you can and can't do. And so that's obviously depending on administration, et cetera. So when we look at it, obviously our goal is to get as much revenue and reimbursement as possible, and we will gladly do that. But it's really restrictive based on the guidelines they submit to us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ray. Did anybody else have any other questions on this item? All right. Hearing none, we would be moving on to the last item on the new business, proposed town council stipend discussion. It is my understanding that there is the potential for the town council to seek out a piece of legislation to enact a monetary stipend for their services to the town of Bridgewater. Right now, as I understood it, it was a conversation that was going to be coming up as legislation that they could be proposing. It would be something that would come back to us as the finance committee. Certainly, it would be something that we would definitely provide advice and or consent on, and some generous input. I would think that before we ask questions about this, if we can get a little more detail from the town manager on that one, not necessarily knowing what is trying to seek to do, it is nice to know what we could potentially be looking at to try to even have a bit of conversation about this evening, to even raise questions and provide even a basic rudimentary input to the town council regarding this supposed proposal.
MJ, I honestly don't know what more I can add to it. I mean, the legislation for considerations on the council agenda is simply a stipend that has to go to voters, whether you do a $5,000 stipend for councilors or a $7,500 stipend for the council president. Once again, on our team, Lori and I, we're not going to speak to the pros or cons of that. I think that's a decision that you should have a conversation with the council regarding. I went through the charter process, it went to the legislature, et cetera. The one bit of information that I will share to the finance committee is they did take a vote, even though the meeting was canceled last week. They took a vote to at least start that process for the next council meeting. So not Tuesday, not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday, and to consider whether to move forward with putting that on the ballot for the April election. But with regards to anything further, that's a town council discussion. We're not going to weigh in any further on that.
So it's not going to be at the next meeting, Justin, right?
It's not for tomorrow night, but it will be a discussion item for them for the 17th meeting. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Given that information, did members have any questions or items that I would suspect maybe this would be another item that folks might want me to say something about in open forum tomorrow?
Absolutely. I don't know how to raise my hand, so if I'm cutting somebody off, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Mr. Thomas. What would you like? I mean, what would you feel would be the best thing to potentially put forward in some of my comments?
You can probably convey my feelings in a much more eloquent way because, as we know, I'm pretty direct. But we have a town. We have, let's just say, slight water problems, slight school funding issues. Poor Lori can't get lights at work during meetings. We've got we've got some issues here, and I know there's some new members on the town council that haven't been there all that long, but they're the ones that govern this town. And as far as I'm concerned, you want a stipend, fix some of the problems we have. I will convey these messages myself at the town council meetings, but absolutely not on my end. And if this rolls back around to us, hopefully they pull this back and don't pursue it. But it is something I feel very strongly about, and I will fight tooth and nail to the end in opposition to, whether it's in here or at town council meetings, wherever else. It's just now is not the time to be asking for that whatsoever.
See, Mike, you really are eloquent. I can tell.
Mark, I might need you for backup.
If I may, MJ,
Yes, Mr. Palmieri.
I'm sorry. I agree 100%. And just so you know, for some history, the selectmen prior to this form of government had also been paid up until some years ago, around a $2,000 stipend. But it involved other benefits.
They got health insurance.
Right. They were paid by the town, so therefore they were able to get the health insurance, and I believe it also
pension.
Right, pension as well. So I even though I think they were talking about taking and not allowing that, so to speak, to happen, that just means that's for now. I agree 100%. I would go a little deeper than saying we have slight issues with water and schools. I'd go a little deeper than that. And this is not the time to even think about something like that. So I'm 100% on board with you. I think they'd be crazy if they brought it forward. I think it would get pummeled at the ballot.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Knoll. Oh, yep.
I'm not in the spirit of beating a dead horse, and both gentlemen highlighted. What I would like to understand is their justification for wanting to put this together. Given the things that's been already outlined, given the town's position in rejecting a recent override with the school. Just given where we are at, from a financial health perspective. So I guess I would be curious to understand their thought process in coming up with this proposal. So as you're sort of articulating it, and in some ways, letting them know, hey, we got greater fish, we got bigger fish to fry. How did it come about, wanting to propose a stipend? So
what was the genesis of this idea? I think I share the frustration of members of the committee. Just hearing that alone, knowing the financial situation that the town is in, and knowing what our view of it is, it seems a bit. It actually seems very concerning that in a financially difficult time that such a proposal would be brought forward. It seems to lack a level of sensitivity to the situation, which I think as a finance committee, we are demonstrating to them that we are concerned that such a matter would be brought forth and be even put to the public, or even uttered in discussion. A little bit of history for folks who have only just recently been on this committee. A stipend was proposed, if I recall correctly, several years ago, and it was something that was kept at the council level. They wanted to move it forward. It eventually went nowhere. But the reason being is because it would have been financially irresponsible for the council to have done so. So for me, speaking on behalf of the finance committee, it worries me that this issue comes up again because of all the other matters that are before the town right now that have a much more significant financial aspect to them and a deeper financial impact. It seems counterintuitive for our colleagues at the council level to put something forward that would cost the taxpayers more money, but ultimately it would be, if it did end up on the ballot, it would be up to the people to say yes or no to it. It raises a bunch of alarm bells for us as a finance committee to even see something like that right now be brought forward. And I think the impression of the committee that I have right now is when I do go speak to the council tomorrow and go before them, I think the biggest question is what was the genesis for this? What is the reason for this outside of providing providing monetary compensation for what is all intents and purposes a elected volunteer position. And for those of us who are volunteers, we are unpaid volunteers. And if we are to provide that same equity across all boards, committees, and commissions and the town's legislative branch, then the fair level of equity should be the expectation that the council's proposal seems to be not in good intent, but also is unfair to the rest of the boards, committees, and commissions who do their work, including our committee, on a frequent basis without any recompense or compensation, because we know that the town wouldn't even be able to afford such. And if they go for a stipend, it does, and I'm looking at this from, let's look at it from a domino effect here. One domino falls, then it opens it up to a greater conversation of, should all volunteers be paid? That would be a question that would be a concern for most folks, but I won't pontificate that on that further, but I do know that there is a frustration of why would this come up now at this time, especially when we're facing such difficult financial challenges. And we certainly need an answer for that, because if it does come to us, I think I have an idea of what the committee is going to say. I won't necessarily say what they're going to say, but I have a feeling that there's going to be a very strong opinion on it.
If I may, MJ, just a couple of points. First of all, Rig, my response to their justification is that they have no justification. And relative to insensitivity, and this goes back to why it's so important that we are involved with that group known as the school department. The superintendent of schools was given in his most recent contract a $10,000 raise. So talk about insensitive. That would be number one. Number two, maybe MJ, it would be a good thing if you could poll those of us that are here tonight what we feel, and then a message could be sent to the town council that something they're considering, according to the finance committee. Whether it's unanimous or whatever the case may be, we don't recommend they bring that forward to the town at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a very good point, Nick. I think it would be something, because this is something that we're talking about tonight, we could certainly take an action on it and do almost like a dear colleague letter to them stating what our general consensus opinion is. That is something I really want to hear from you folks tonight. I think it would not just be appropriate. I think it would be, at this point, necessary to tackle that and to try to maybe head it off at the pass because of this, because of our financial situation. Something like this, I'm gonna generally broadly speak that I have this sense of feeling for the finance committee in whole that this would be something that would not be a measure that is supported, but I would want to hear all of you members tonight. I would want to hear your voices on that, and then I would issue the statement on behalf of the committee to that effect.
Would it
Madam
be
Chair.
appropriate to make an amendment?
Sorry.
I mean, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, would it be appropriate to make a motion to see what we get for a response out of this? Or
would we need to do a motion on this, or would this just be by general unanimous consent?
I don't think a motion is necessary. If you guys want to send me your thoughts or opinions or comments, I can then put them all together for MJ and get it all in one document for her.
Yeah.
So I would just say, are you planning on doing this tomorrow, MJ?
Yes, I am. My plan was to go to the council meeting because of how things shook out last week. The memo that I had sent to the president last week, unfortunately, was not necessarily heard by everybody in town. I would probably be going to reread that again. So I would want to get this taken care of probably tonight to share with the council in the overnight, so they have it in the morning to have ready for the council tomorrow night. So yes, I would want to take care of it this evening.
Yeah, so if everybody could get it to me before, I don't know, like 11 tomorrow, I could get everything compiled for you, MJ.
That's a little tight on my schedule. But I'll just say, if it's all right, that really what they're proposing is just completely unthinkable and irresponsible. And no.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Knoll?
if you could, you know, as you're wrapping your head around ways to articulate that, if you can sort of like highlight, you know, just give an outline of a reminder outline, if you will, of some of the challenges, water, infrastructure, lack of revenue, not being able to even decide on the HEROES Act as an example. I think context from our end is extremely important, so that they can receive the message, and hopefully, withdraw this. I guess in addition to that, I have a question. Who vetoes these things? And I don't want to pretend that I understand government, municipality government, because I'm not an expert at it. But I do understand, I do understand sort of how it works from the state level. There's a veto power. Who's got the veto power when decisions are made to give raises or to fund certain things. I understand the people plays a critical role. I understand we play a critical role as an advisory board, and yes, town council plays a critical role. But is there a veto power? And where does that veto power lies?
I'll at least put something out there a little bit, and I'll let Justin speak to it as well. Because this would be something that would go to the council and then potentially be brought to the voters, I suspect that the veto authority that you would be looking for would be what would happen to it once it's put to the voters. If it's on the ballot, the voters could say yes or they could say no. In the event that they say no, then it's a dead issue at that point. It stops proceeding further. Certainly, it wouldn't stop the council from bringing it up again and putting it again on another ballot, similar to how the overrides usually occur. But as it relates to other types of veto authority, if it, in the unlikely event that something like that would have passed, this is where I don't really want to get too much into what if scenarios, but there is a scenario where it would happen that if something like that did get approved, but the public was really angry about it, I don't know if there's a mechanism outside of what constitutionally under the charter would be grounds for, and I'm trying not to get too political on this, but procedurally, it would probably be a recall petition of some sort, but I don't know if that would rise to the level of occasion on that. It would ultimately be in the hands of the council. It would be the people would have to hold the council accountable, and they would be the ones to broadcast to the town council that no, we don't want this to occur. But if they somehow manage to get it through, I'm not going to play the blame game or anything like that, and I certainly wouldn't want to bring that up in this type of form either. But I would think the veto authority that you're looking for, Rig, would be they would say no at the ballot box, and failing the ballot box, they probably could recall whoever made the proposal. That's the only thing I could think of. Justin,
I'm not going to belabor
I've
the
not
point.
necessarily encountered this type of situation before.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to belabor the point. I think the biggest thing that you said there was the voters. The voters ultimately have to decide this. That is the veto authority, I guess, in terms of Rig. But also, while I did say I'm not going to speak to the merits of this proposal or not, one thing I think people have to consider, this was a charter amendment that was submitted years ago, and not necessarily this town council. It was just recently approved by the legislature and the governor, so now it comes back to the town. So just for context, once again, not advocating for or against this, the only thing that the town council has taken a vote on is to allow for it to consider whether they want to move forward with putting it on the ballot for this. Like, they have not made a vote whether they are going to do it or not, that's a discussion they're going to have, and that's not tomorrow night, but the following town council meeting. So in regards to that, I think I've addressed all the questions I would be able to answer. So I'm going to bid you guys adieu. Have a good evening.
Okay, me too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for
Justin,
coming on
thank
tonight.
you. I saw you had your
Thank
coat
you.
on, and thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you as well. Have a good one.
Josh as well, and Lori. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what, MJ, I think it would be a good idea to, just for us to
During the
be on,
meeting.
during the meeting, to
Yes.
go on record as, with our thoughts on this, and
No.
we're being proactive. Pardon?
We don't have an
No.
item in front of us. We don't have anything in front of us, Nick.
Pardon? No,
I'm
but there,
not voting for something we don't even have in front of us.
well, it's on their agenda, John.
I think what the conversation has gotten to this evening, John, is whether or not the membership would like for us to have a unified message to council to say what we believe as a general consensus. I will go with what the committee says, yes or no. Yes, we want them to go ahead with it, or no, we don't want them to go ahead with it. I think what we're looking for is general consent as to say one or the other, and to have me go before them and say, Mr. President, members of the council, I know you're going to have this before you. This is what the finance committee believes is a concern, A, B, and C, and D. We get to that point, we say we either vehemently oppose or we emphatically support. I think that's where the conversation has gone to. Certainly, I know it is. This is actually one of our later meetings that we've ever had, so we've actually managed to reach a record. I think this is one of the longest we've actually had in recent memory, and I think it's really important that we had this type of meeting tonight because we needed this. So I think where we are at this juncture in the meeting is that I think what folks want to do is go on record as saying in a unified way what the committee's overall feeling is about this, and we broadcast that to the council at tomorrow's meeting. So we're not necessarily voting on a measure,
Absolutely.
but we're basically saying you're having me go and be the voice, the arbiter of the committee to say, council members, this is our concern. It is our hope that A, B, and C happens. Thank you so much.
To unite a united message, unless somebody here disagrees, and I really don't want to spend 2 more hours beating this dead horse because you know how I feel. But yeah, I think you 100% have a unified message to deliver to town council without any voting or motions or anything like that.
100% agree.
Did any other members want to say anything? Mr. Raymond, Mr. Knoll?
I think we've exhausted. I agree with John. There's nothing before us. However, in the spirit of getting a message out, getting ahead of this, it sounds like the consensus is, hey, they should not even put this before, before the people.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely.
And I wholeheartedly agree with everyone. It's not the timing. The timing's not great. There's a lot of insensitivity. I mean, you name it. It's just not a good timing. So,
Mr. Raymond, did you have anything to say?
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's a waste of time. Yeah.
All right. Then I think that being all said and all things considered, I believe it is the opinion of the committee that we do not want to see the council proceed any further with this stipend matter, and that I will be the one to say on our behalf that we hope and pray that the council will cause the issue to die on the floor.
Amen.
Absolutely.
All right, then. I have the directive. I will take that directive and I will go with it.
Fantastic. Motion to adjourn.
All right. Actually, I will now say we've gotten to item F. Well, we've already done it. I think we've kind of already done additional items for discussion. So if we don't have any, we will now move on to everybody's favorite motion of the night: adjournment of the meeting.
There's a second.
second.
All right. So who made the first motion?
Second.
Nick, did you make the motion? All right. Nick made the motion. Mr. Knoll seconded it. Josh, can you take the roll call, please?
MJ,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
John,
Bye.
Nick,
Aye.
Chris, Mark,
Aye.
Greg.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Thank
you for your
you.
commitment.
Good night.